This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
8 minutes after 10 is the time. But before we get stuck into the stories of the day, a moment to reflect upon that horrible news from the Ricky Hatton inquest, confirming that the boxer and, from everything I've gathered, all-round good bloke, took his own life. If you can think of somebody who fits into this category, do me a favor. Do them a favor. Just check up on someone today, will you? Just put a call in to someone you haven't spoken to for a while, someone you know is perhaps having a tough time of it. Maybe they've shared some of their mental health issues with you, or maybe you just suspect that they've got a bit of a black dog going on, or maybe just someone who you think might be a bit lonely, or someone that you haven't checked out. I've got someone in mind who I will call after the show today, and I wonder whether you have too. And let's just do it. Let's just promise each other now that we'll do that. Oh, you can do it now, of course. You don't have to listen to this bilge, but it'd be a bit weird if I did. So let's just do that. There will be someone that you can check up on, and the difference, I always think of it as like incredibly sensitive scales, and you never know where the tipping point is to bring you back to the other side of that that dread decision. It can be something as light as a cigarette paper that lands on the scale and just makes the burden unbearable, and then someone lifts it off again and suddenly the burdens are bearable again. And in those moments, lives are decided. So just anyway, I've got nothing to add except that. If you can think of anyone that fits into that category, whoever they are, family, friend, a former colleague, then just put that call in later. I've got a couple of weird thoughts rattling around in my brain at the moment. Oddly, because I was coming on air preparing to talk about the Chinese spy case, which is going to happen, by the way. So if you want to book your place there, if you think you can explain it. I was talking to Elliot. Eleanor's away this week. I was talking to Elliot, who's producing in her absence, about the possibility of offering up half of my show fee to the best available explanation, because in many ways it's my job to do this stuff. And that's why I get paid for these morning meetings and you don't. But he thought that was a ridiculous idea. So I won't be doing that. There's absolutely no chance at all of that happening. But I still would invite you to have a crack at it. And I will make that invitation very, very shortly. But the Michelle Mone thing, Stephen Kinnett being really outspoken for a politician in these things, just sort of bubbled up during the news bulletin. And it reminded me of a couple of things, okay? It reminded me of a line that I read last week about PPE MedPro and Michael Gove's VIP lane. Michael Gove, like all the other people responsible for hobbling and nobbling this country, has gone on to be promoted and get new jobs and exciting opportunities. But of course, the decision to set up a lane whereby, and the line I read, and it was utterly unchallenged and it wasn't in quotes, it has become the accepted history of the pandemic, that people who had personal connections to senior Tories, even if they had no experience or record whatsoever of supplying these sorts of materials, would be given priority over individuals and companies who'd been in that business for years. And I don't know how closely you listen to this programme, but I always think of that call, and it wasn't the only call that we took, and she got back in touch on a slightly different subject last month. But I always remember the call we took from the woman in the business of selling ventilators, who couldn't get her phone calls picked up in Westminster. And that was at precisely the moment when, if Sir Herbert Gussett had turned up claiming he had a magnificent ventilator contact in Ulaanbaatar, and if they could just see fit to throw a few quids my way, I'll have the ventilators delivered by tea time, old boy. He'd get a contract. And that line there, get priority over people with proven track records, speaks to something quite spectacularly sordid, doesn't it? And I mention it, as ever on this programme, in order to introduce a bit of a boast. Because what it demonstrated was that we were ahead of the game on that with the quality of callers that we now get. I remember on a much less serious scale, the first call we took from the fellow who was on the track and trace or whatever, when people were working from home and trying to work out. And he said, I haven't done anything for 2 weeks. I've just been sitting here waiting for a phone call I can't even remember the full details of what that service was that was offered up during lockdowns. You're supposed to ring in and check your... I can't even remember. And then about a month later, it became a huge story. Thousands of people are sitting at home doing nothing and just checking their keyboards to reveal that they're still alive. And we got that first. And then, of course, we get things wrong. And this has also been a week for remembering the dangers of footballification. I had to come on air on Monday and praise to the rafters the arrangement put in place in the Middle East by Donald Trump. It would have been churlish and ridiculous to fail to acknowledge that it's unlikely, and I've seen some people dissenting from this, but I'm not persuaded, it's unlikely that anyone else could have done it in quite that way at quite this time. It doesn't detract from all of the myriad moral depravities that the man represents and contains and the hideous conduct that characterises him. That was a stopped clock moment, and to resist that, to not say that, would be stupid. And then Angela Rayner's mortgage, which didn't seem like a very big story until it did, until precisely the point that the independent advisor on ethics said, actually, and it was a narrow judgment, but it was a complete one. Actually, someone in her position should have got even better advice than she did. She needed to be squeaky clean as opposed to merely clean. And you had to guard against footballification on that. So if you are persuaded that the current government, deeply flawed, fractious and disappointing though they may be, are infinitely better than any of the currently available options, you can't defend the indefensible or even defend the dodgy on the grounds of your political affiliations or your tribal loyalties. It's why I will never, ever be able to thank Jeremy Corbyn enough for proving how easy it is for people who lean towards Labour to not suffer from footballification, to be able to point out flaws galores in the person that ends up at the top of that party. So I get a message like this straight away. It's not confusing at all, writes Patrick. People who don't understand and or political opponents are trying to make this into an issue when it really isn't. And that's when I check the knot on my scarf. Because it can't be that simple. There's just too much noise and too much smoke. It can't simply be an attempt to turn a non-event into an event in order to score points off the current government. Can it? 0345 60 60973. We're heading quickly towards what's going on and how important is it? What's going on? In fact, let's do that now. What's going on? How serious is it? 0345 60 60973. David Allen Green is a legal... I don't know if he'd enjoy me calling him an expert, but he certainly seems like an expert to me. One of the great shames of the last few years was when David decided that he would no longer contribute to broadcast media. He was a great help to us during post-Brexit conversations, particularly. But he confines his contributions to discourse now to print. He writes for Prospect magazine and he blogs on Substack under his own name. And he gave me enormous comfort this morning when I turned to his pages and read, usually when one reads up about a confusing-looking case, the less confusing it becomes. This is usually because there will be contextual points which make odd-looking things seem less odd. But sometimes the more you find out about a case, the more confusing it becomes. And the dropping of the Chinese spying prosecutions is very confusing indeed. It simply does not make sense on the information available. I found Juliet Samuel's piece in the Times helpful, albeit very clearly loyal to the notion that something very serious has gone on. It also claimed that the government has probably overcome the worst of it. And then you open up the Daily Mail just for a giggle and they've got a columnist claiming Keir Starmer's probably going to have to resign. So anybody telling you that they have a clear and concise grasp... Well, I can't say this because I'm about to ask you to ring in with clear and concise grasps of the matter. Most people telling you that they have a clear and concise grasp of this matter are either delusional or dishonest. Which leads me to a slightly awkward question. Do you have a clear and concise understanding of this matter? Please call me now on 0345 60 60973. And how serious is it? Seriously. How serious is it seriously? One thing that did strike me, and I don't even know if you know this. This is one of those meta phone-ins, by the way. It's a phone-in that is probably underpinned by a belief that I'm not going to get any good calls. So you need to prove me wrong. on this, and it has to be a little bit better than the bias, facts, prejudice, right-wing media. They're kind of my little bingo sheet of things that I normally attribute stuff to. There must be more going on here than a lazy analysis of deliberate attacks on the government would allow. But something that really did occur, and again, there are some mornings where I feel enormous relief when other people point out things I've been thinking but lack the confidence to say out loud. And it was Jessica Elgott, the deputy political editor of The Guardian, who pointed out that the actual information that was being allegedly passed between the two men whose trial has collapsed was absolutely rubbish. I mean, it was absolutely rubbish. It was the kind of stuff, and I can say this because you may not know, that many, many years ago, I used to be a particularly poor newspaper diarist. Now, when I say diarist, you probably think planning desk. He was in charge of the calendar. It was his job to tell the proper journalists why they were supposed to be going on a Friday and that the big Joe Bloggs case was due to drop in the High Court on Monday. That's not what a newspaper diarist is. A newspaper diarist is a gossip columnist, but we feel that is a bit vulgar, so we call ourselves diarists. And when I was a particularly poor newspaper diarist, I could write a nice column, but I never got any decent stories because I didn't know what a story was. Spoiler alert, still don't, which brings us back to the China case, 0345 6060 973. When I was a particularly poor newspaper diarist, this was the kind of stuff that I might have thought was vaguely newsworthy. It is simply rubbish. Mr. Cash told Mr. Berry that Tom Tugendhat MP, who was at that time not a minister, would almost certainly obtain a cabinet position from Rishi Sunak. Mr. Cash told Mr. Berry, this is all contained within the evidence, that Jeremy Hunt MP was likely to pull out of the Conservative leadership race and back Tom Tugendhat MP. So there's two things there that constitute evidence in this abandoned case and didn't happen at all. Tugendhat didn't even get a cabinet job. And he didn't back Rishi Sunak either. He backed Liz Truss, and she didn't even put him in the cabinet. So, is it intelligence if it's not even true? There may be some more stuff in there. I haven't read it all, but there may be some more stuff in there which constitutes a slightly more serious breach. But for heaven's sake, what am I supposed to be exercised by? Is the question. And I mentioned Angela Rayner's house, and I mentioned Donald Trump's ceasefire agreement, because I'm not footballified. I fight footballification every day, and you have to start at home. I'll give you a brilliant example of footballification with today's first missing word round. Are you ready for this? Regular viewers of blank most likely to overestimate level of net migration. So viewers of what are more likely than fans of anywhere or anyone else to wrongly believe that net migration is still increasing? What would you need to be tuning into? I don't think I'm going to give any prizes for this one. But that's footballification in action. Some media outlets are dedicated to footballification. They take your prejudices and your ignorance and they turn the dial up to 11. Missing word round. Regular viewers of what are most likely to overestimate level of net migration or believe abject nonsense about a politically live subject. So we guard against footballification. And you have to start at home. You have to start with yourself. So if the government is on the hook for something here, I'd like you to tell me what it is. What am I supposed to be exercised by in the Chinese spy case? And somewhat worryingly, my own feelings about this will be proved if I get no calls. That's a fairly risky approach to take. I can't believe I won't get any, but and obviously we're not going to let on the sort of flotsam and jetsam that sometimes pollute other outlets, but I don't know that I mean, you must be able to. You must be able. You've been paying more attention to this than I have. But I want you to guard against partisanship, undue partisanship. A ludicrous piece in the Mail claiming that Keir Starmer might have to resign. And similarly, text coming into me claiming that there's absolutely nothing to see here. Both seem to speak to extremities when the truth probably lies somewhere between the two. So give me a call and tell me what we are supposed to be exercised by, or I'll inflict my understanding and thinking about this subject on you after the break. I'd much rather hear yours. What are we supposed to be exercised by? Not in the context of China in general. It's a stupid question, really, because but in the context of this very specific case, which has been absolutely everywhere for days now, and which I'm not embarrassed to admit, I don't really understand why. 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
20 minutes after 10 is the time. You've got to be in the right mood for this, because I'm right. Nobody's got anything to say about this subject, which is what I said upstairs about 20 minutes ago. It is either an opportunity to ignore the story and be bombarded with messages from people who hate the current government asking why you're not talking about this story, invite them to tell you why you should be talking about this story, and of course they can't. But equally, the mystery then becomes, why? Why is this everywhere when nobody knows what's going on or has anything interesting to say about it? And I've read everything that's around. All there is a consensus of confusion. And the more partisan the outlet, or the more partisan the person, the harder they're working to turn it into something that the current government should be embarrassed by, despite the fact that the original events happened under previous governments. I like this text. Whatever happens with the China story, James, please don't do anything on driverless cars. Do you know, I'm thinking of doing that tomorrow, actually, but not from the point of view of do you like them? From the point of view of that fella from the taxi firm, from the taxi union, who just couldn't quite see how they could ever catch on. I'm fascinated by the psychology of that. But back to China, 21 minutes after 10. I've said to you on many occasions in the past that it's my job to make the phones ring on this programme. I told you we were going meta today. Keith just said this could be the day of your dreams when you talk uninterrupted until 11 o'clock. And I said, well, bad news is we've got a guest booked at 10:45. But I've often said to you that it is my job to make the phones ring on this programme. And I have sometimes said to you, I honestly don't think anyone's going to call me on this. But I didn't really mean it in the past. I kind of thought that it was my failure to understand something that could be used as a lens through which you could then look at the fact that you do have something interesting to say. I did a straw poll in the office earlier. I've read 4 different articles today about what is going on and what is happening, and I haven't got a clear bead on any of it. So I think today is the exception to the rule. I think today, and of course I would say this, wouldn't I? But I think this is the topic, and it's a topic because it's on the front page of almost every newspaper, and it was the sole focus of PMQs yesterday, and nobody can provide a really neat explanation or analysis of what is happening, and nobody can really point objectively and honestly to culpability, responsibility, or blame. And it's not my fault that nobody's got anything to say about it, because what I'm doing is proving that nobody's got anything to say about it. Okay? You're still not just welcome, but actively encouraged to challenge that conclusion. 0345 6060 973. Because if we can agree on that, if we can agree on the idea of a consensus of confusion, a consensus of confusion. Yesterday it looked like the government were on the hook for something. Today it looks like the CPS is on the hook for something, and it is unprecedented to have 2 branches of government at each other's throats like this. The man currently carrying the can is the Deputy National Security Director, whereas a lot of the newspaper animus was directed at his boss, Jonathan Powell, who, had he intervened or had he been responsible for this decision, could have been embarrassing for Keir Starmer, but they insisted he wasn't, it was his deputy. So if this consensus of confusion is correct, and I think Harry and Hove might be about to challenge the idea that this is an almost impenetrably confusing and complicated case, then our task this morning turns into what's actually going on here. If the only thing anybody can agree on, or the only thing everybody can agree on, is that it's profoundly confusing and very strange, Why is it dominating our news agendas in the way that it is? And remember, I am the antithesis of footballification. You make a strong case for why the current government has got very, very difficult questions to answer. I'm here for it. But I think it answered them by releasing the witness statements earlier of the key contributors to the original case, which probably, Matthew Parris is quite good on this today, which probably isn't a spying case at all in the case of at least one of the previous defendants, who just seems, as I said, to be passing on relatively rubbish and often wrong gossip to a mate. Right, Harry and Hove, the pressure's on. What have you got?
Hi, James. Thanks for taking my call. First-time caller.
You're very welcome.
I just thought I'd take up the challenge, seeing as no one else seems to be interested. I've been following this story since it first appeared. I think it was back in September when the charges were dropped, and it's been kind of covered up in the party conference season, which seems quite kind of convenient. And it's
that's already an alarm bell, mate. I guess it's typical, isn't it? You're the only person that wants to talk. No, I mean an alarm bell for sounding a bit like a conspiracy theorist. The idea that the CPS would time the decision to drop the case to coincide with party conference season.
Well, that may or may not be a coincidence. I mean, I'm not necessarily reading anything into that.
Well, you just did. It was the first thing you said. That is definitely a coincidence. You're already suggesting political bias of the CPS, who've actually caused enormous embarrassment to the government. So the two cancel each other out. Anyway, you carry on. You're the one who's got something interesting to say. I'm the one who hasn't.
Yeah, I'm not too clued up with the recent. You mentioned the Matthew Parris article. I haven't read that this morning.
No, just why this is a big story, a very important story, and who is on the hook.
Well, it's just a question as to whether the government has in any way interfered with the case and done anything to try to prevent it from going to trial, either independently.
No, I know all that. Mate. I'm not completely stupid. I know all that, but that was dealt with yesterday at PMQs and then signed, sealed, and delivered with the release of the witness statements today.
Well, that's my point, really. It's whether.
Harry, I had such high hopes. I mean, probably this is my fault for not laying out the stuff that's bleedingly obvious originally, but you've done it for us. I do understand why people are saying it's a story, but I don't understand whether or not it is. You've essentially regurgitated the Conservative and Daily Telegraph position there by saying the government have questions to answer, they've covered something up, and I say prove it, and you say, oh no, I can't do that.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for more information to be. Well,
you need to read the witness statements. You need to read the witness statements, I think. Right. So why? And Harry may have unwittingly provided an answer to this question. Why has it been the biggest story in town and the dominating factor at PMQs for an entire week? Particularly in a week when events in Gaza would have distracted attention from it, and I'm sure Harry wouldn't suggest that was deliberately planned by Donald Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu or indeed the leaders of Hamas. But events in the Middle East have distracted attention from it. It has still, quotes, broken through in the media, but I haven't heard yet from a single person for whom it has broken through in reality. I'm going to do this probably once every 10 years because it's something you need enormous confidence as a radio phone-in host to do. And the idea came to me upstairs when I overheard conversations on other programmes about how nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody had anything interesting to say. And I thought, well, that's the topic. That's the actual story. You have a news agenda, and it's not right-wing, it's the entire news agenda dedicated to or dominated by a single story, and absolutely nobody has a strong understanding of what is supposed to have gone on. 03456060973. I read a piece in the Mail by Dan Hodges, who used to be a brilliant commentator, but, you know, we've all got bills to pay. And it was among the maddest speculative bilge that even the Daily Mail has ever printed, culminating in an idea that Keir Starmer lied repeatedly yesterday and is going to have to resign. And you turn to the Times and you read a measured piece by someone who is deeply suspicious of China, I presume rightly, and they're saying it's so murky, it's so confusing, you can't say anything with certainty except that the government have probably got over the worst. And then you turn to David Alan Green, my favourite legal commentator, and he writes the words that I read at the top of the show, the idea that normally the more you read into something, the better your understanding becomes, but on this one, the more you read into it, the more confusing it gets. So why is it still the biggest story in the country? It's highly likely I will be talking for another 15 minutes after this. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
There is an urgent question on this in the House of Commons, just in case you thought I was exaggerating the significance and size of the story. But two things as well, because today is a very odd day in our relationship. It's a meta day, when in some ways our roles are reversed, or you're all in the studio with me, as opposed to me sitting here pontificating and pronouncing, because I started the programme not expecting a single person to be able to shed any light on the question that I'm asking. And with the greatest of love and respect to Harry and Hove, nobody has. I haven't even got any people knocking on the door of Idiot's Corner. Usually you'd have someone accusing me of pursuing an agenda or doing that, but people, I think even these idiots, those idiots, are not idiotic enough to think that nobody would notice that they haven't rung in to explain why it's really important and really significant. I am rejecting, by the way, the idea that it is simply a hatchet job on the government, because the CPS led the charge. It's the CPS that have embarrassed the government, and yesterday, in many ways, the ball, I think, was volleyed back into the CPS's court by the Prime Minister, who had the ball teed up for him by the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. And this show being this show, and you being you, and me being me, I've now got a full switchboard. But what's the other thing I always teach you about radio phone-ins? It's not that hard to get the phones to ring. The challenge is the quality. So we could now have moved from no quantity at all and no quality into lots of quantity, but no quality. I don't want to sound rude. Ron's up next, then William. It may well be that they're going to explode my theory, that nobody really has got anything interesting or illuminating to say about this. Or even certain. There's no certainty about this. Because it could be that we're going to hit 10:45 with nothing. Except you won't have to listen to my uninterrupted voice until then, because, as I say, loads of people have now risen to the challenge, and at risk of being rude, I think they're all going to fail. Ron in Glasgow is first. Ron, take it away.
Hello, good morning, James.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, mate. What's going on in China?
Well, here's what's going through my mind, and I thought I would share it with you.
Thank you.
It is a big story, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
It's a big story because the perception that we have as the public is that there were two spies that have been let off to put the security of this country at risk.
How?
Now
how did they?
No. I know you're really, really good at that, James. But please let me finish, and then you can say anything you like. It's your show.
You have to tell me how they've put security.
Well, I'm gonna do that.
Oh, good.
Well, number one, we don't know. They haven't gone to trial.
No, but we've seen the evidence.
They could be completely innocent, as far as I know.
Of course they could. We've seen. No. You can't do this.
Well, I can.
No, you can't. No, you absolutely can't. No, you can't, because I can do this. There you go, you see? So the problem you have is that you can't say things unchallenged, that the evidence is available. The evidence that the CPS used to decide whether or not to bring a prosecution and whether or not to pursue a prosecution is available. And it contains things like, I think Tom Tugendhat is going to abandon Jeremy Hunt's leadership bid, or join Jeremy Hunt's leadership bid, and Liz Truss is going to give him a job. How does that compromise national security, allegedly?
Now, hang on just a moment. I think perhaps you didn't hear how I started this. I said the perception of the public remains that there may have been spies in this country giving information that they shouldn't have given. That is the perception.
Yes, but we know what the information is, so that's not the answer to the questions that I'm asking. William is in Southampton. William, what would you like to say?
Well, I think the central point here is that China is demonstrably engaged in cyber and other espionage activities against the UK.
Given.
And the government knows that.
Correct.
On the other hand,
they're also engaged in building nuclear power plants, so designating them an enemy, if that's even a thing, is going to be incredibly tricky, whoever the government is.
Absolutely so. Regardless of the government, on the one hand, we know that China is a threat to national security, and on the other hand, we want to do multi-billion-pound deals with them.
Yes.
And I think that is at the core of what this story is about. It's not about the two individuals concerned. And by the way, if the Crown Prosecution Service wanted to succeed in their prosecution, all they had to do was say to the government, here is the form of words that we need from you in order to make this case a success. And the government could then have said, well, we're not prepared to say that, or yes, we are.
This is good. Don't blow it, William. Because this is pretty much where I am. And I don't know if you've seen the comment about we were about 5% short on the evidential threshold. And I think that 5% would be made up by precisely the scenario you describe. I don't think designating a foreign state an enemy is actually a thing, despite the fact that almost everybody involved in this is claiming that it is. Juliet Samuel in the Times today is very strong on explaining why it isn't, but it should be. But in terms of the government providing something that pushed the threshold, pushed the case over the threshold, if they'd been asked to do it and said no, then we'd have a scandal. But there's no evidence that happened, until, of course, there is.
And if I may say, the other smelly part of this is the impending decision on whether the government gives the green light to this new Chinese embassy in London, which is questionably an even greater threat to our national security.
So in the context of this particular case, one of the main reasons why it's been blown up is because, as the last fellow demonstrated, people are being exercised by things that haven't happened and things that aren't true. And that probably has been fostered and fomented by media coverage. The idea that it's about really serious espionage and really big spying, when it categorically isn't, because the evidence is publicly available. It's about pathetic Westminster tittle-tattle that was allegedly being passed on to China because their net is so enormous they're trying to swoop up absolutely everything they can. And the second bit of it is the difficulty, the dichotomy between ally and enemy.
Yeah, quite so.
Can't be treason if information is being passed allegedly to people who are building nuclear power plants for you, because it would be insane to have those people building nuclear power plants for you.
Yes. And that's the interest. So we either declare China an enemy of the state and act accordingly and close down power stations and take their technology off our networks, or we just roll over and say, well, that's fine. We know they're an enemy, but actually we need their technology and their money.
You've gone a bit far there, because legally the crucial point would be the CPS asked for the government's help in getting this over the line, and the government said no, and that hasn't. No one is claiming that happened. Well, people have claimed that it happened, but that's why Keir Starmer's statement yesterday and the release of the witness statements today kind of kicks that idea into touch. If not touch, then certainly into the long grass.
Well, and the suggestion that, Jonathan Powell or whoever decided not to interfere, well, actually, I would think the reverse ought to have been true. I think the government should have been making it very clear to the CPS what should be said and what shouldn't be said.
Ooh, no, but that would be a problem of a different order, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, it's about evidence, isn't it?
Yes. And they didn't have enough to proceed with the case, which leaves the question hanging of how did they have enough to bring it in the first place, to which the answer would be they thought that final 5% would appear, and it didn't. Whether or not that is because the government declined to provide it or because of other reasons, we do not know. William coming perilously close to making an entire mockery of this hour of radio by providing helpful and potentially illuminating insights. But none of that explains why it's been such a massive story. Because, or rather it does, and this is pretty much where I am this morning, it's a massive story for reasons that have very little to do with the minutiae of this specific case. And this, I hope, is the moment where the clouds begin to clear. The caller before William, whose name temporarily eludes me, but was, I found, quite a frustrating individual, refusing to answer questions. Who did he think he is? Nigel Farage? Pointed out that the public perception, the public perception is such that ... But that's putting the cart before the horse. The public perception is created by media coverage. Media coverage is bogus or misleading or deliberately provocative, then the public perception is not actually the answer to the question that I'm asking. The media have turned this into a much bigger story than it is because, as William points out, there are very real concerns, and many very good politicians like Alicia Kearns make these points very powerfully about Chinese interference in British matters, even British governmental matters. Dominic Cummings is back in is back in the news today, claiming he's known for ages that there were all sorts of breaches going on, but they have nothing to do with the case that the CPS has just dropped. This is literally tittle-tattle, being passed on from a researcher in Westminster to a mate who allegedly then passed it on to a representative or an agent of the Chinese government. It doesn't change the fact that it was tittle-tattle. The act of passing it on is what would have been examined in court. And none of it's very interesting or exciting or particularly damaging. I, for the record, think that the Chinese government absolutely has tentacles reaching into all sorts of important corners of this country. And that the covert espionage that is being undertaken by them explains, A, why we put the kibosh on Huawei a couple of years ago, and why many very good politicians are deeply exercised by the simple question of whether or not we should be doing so much business with them. But none of that's got anything to do with this case. So I think, and the phone lines are still open for a couple more minutes, I think that what we have here is the story, the case being used as a vessel into which many people have poured their profound and often quite justified concerns about the relationship between the UK and China. But this ain't the case to do it on. I think. David's in Ewell. David, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I'm someone who was a parliamentary researcher for members of parliament for about 30 years, and I wanted to talk about the role of Christopher Cash in this. I mean, he's someone who was a relatively junior person in parliament, but he had an interesting job. He was a researcher for the woman who was the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, and of course she would have been dealing with some high-level and very important diplomatic information.
Yeah, just be slightly careful. I know you will be, but just remember the laws of libel and not so much contempt of court because the case has been dropped, but don't say anything that you wouldn't be able to prove.
But the information that she would have had would have been dealt with in the public domain, apart from off-the-record briefings, which he may have sat in on. I don't know. But the point is that researchers for members of parliament come across all sorts of interesting information all of the time, some of it very politically embarrassing for other parties, and they share that around. But I don't doubt if he would have come across anything that was of national security interest.
Well, he didn't. I think we know that he didn't because we can actually read the evidence that the CPS had when it was putting the case together.
So I think he really should have his day in court, because I think at the moment his name is being traduced in public for all sorts of things which haven't been proved or tested. And I think to be fair to him, he ought to have his chance to be able to defend himself in the court of law and point out that he didn't do anything that was actually...
I think he would probably agree with you. I don't know if you've read Matthew Parris's blog today, but
no,
he makes almost word for word at times, David. He makes precisely the point that you make.
Good.
Yeah, it is good. It is good because it's someone whose name is going to be forever associated with Merck and possibly... quite probably doesn't deserve to be. It's a really important point. Do you have a view on how the story has blown up in quite the way that it has, given the paucity of the powder at the very bottom of the keg?
I think it's because it's sort of sexy in terms of media terms, because it involves spies and espionage, and I think that always attracts attention.
Yeah, it could be that simple, couldn't it? We're all thinking James Bond.
Yeah, I think so, but the content doesn't justify the huge furore that's happened in the public domain.
I think you're right, but footballification demands that we both acknowledge that we could be wrong. Something could emerge. It'd be like the Angela Rayner story, which seemed like a big hill of nothing until suddenly it wasn't, and it was never any of the things that people claimed that it was. She didn't do anything sort of wrong morally or legally. She just got the wrong advice and believed it. And she should have tried harder to get the advice. That's the hook that she was hung on. I don't know what could emerge here, except proof that the government did deliberately defy the CPS in this matter in order to keep China sweet. But then we're back to the debate about keeping China sweet with a side order of David's reminder that the meat on the table here or the gruel on the table is pretty thin. It's tittle-tattle. It's Westminster tittle-tattle that was often untrue. And that doesn't matter. In the great scheme of things, it is the act of passing information, not the quality of the information, that would meet the evidential threshold. But it's also about who the information is being passed to. That's the really, really tricky bit. That's why the phrase designated enemy has been used a lot by people who, I think, like me, don't know quite enough to say anything with absolute certainty. But if it were to be the case that you're passing information to a sworn enemy, then... how on earth can they be entrusted with helping to build, I think, Sizewell C and various other projects? The question of why has it been dominating the news in this way? And Kemi Badenoch may be the patron saint of this. The answer could be because it looks really important to people who don't understand it, which is kind of where Ron in Aberdeen came in. It looks really important to people who don't understand it. That could be it. Speaking of really important things, there is a new face or a new figure on the right of British politics. He's already been in a tiny amount of hot water because, of course, if you're in the right of British politics, then the amount of hot water you can ever disappear into is minimal compared to if you're on the left, for obvious reasons. But a man who is now beginning to exercise ever-increasing power over our media, and a man who indeed has a link, I think, to today's missing word round. Regular viewers of blank, most likely to overestimate level of net migration. James Ball of the New World newspaper has been doing a bit of a deep dive into this character, and he'll join us after this to tell us more.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:51. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I am usually a seagull, not a trawler. I rely upon the hard work of others to enlighten and illuminate me, and then because of the weird nature of the job that I have and the sort of place that we've managed to carve together over the years, we can help bring it to a slightly wider audience than it may otherwise have reached. Never more so, actually, than on the sort of network of what I very hilariously like to refer to as stink tanks, which congregate around a street in Westminster called Tufton Street, and which, as I laid out in some detail in my last book, exercise extraordinary influence over the UK media. They've infiltrated quite deliberately. If you know where to look, you can find the evidence that they planned it all along, without ever revealing who it is that funds them or whose bidding it is that they do. There's a brief moment in the Sun when Liz Truss became Prime Minister, and one of the worst examples of the genre, the so-called Institute of Economic Affairs, which is a meaningless title that they made up themselves, essentially boasted that she was their creation and that their policies were now going to be defining government. An odd boast to make, given what everybody intelligent and informed could see was likely to happen if Liz Truss pressed ahead with her fiscal dreams. Spoiler alert, she did. And you know what happened. And I had that feeling again reading The New World yesterday. It's once a fortnight. It drops through my letterbox once a week, but once a fortnight it drops through my letterbox on the same day as Private Eye. It's lovely. I like Wednesday evenings. I put my feet up, pour myself a cup of Earl Grey and get tucking into two of my favourite organs. And the political editor of The New World, James Ball, has been looking into the influence of a man who, if the Tories or Nigel Farage's current outfit win the next election, will, as James writes in this week's edition, become the country's most influential non-politician. His name is Paul Marshall, but we must begin, James, by who is he?
So he's a millionaire. He was a hedge fund guy, and for most of his adult life, he was a Liberal Democrat. If anyone's heard of the Orange Book, which was sort of this more economically liberal version of the party that Nick Clegg signed up to, he actually helped write that. But his politics shifted rightwards, in part because his son was cancelled. His son was the bass player in Mumford & Sons, and had a bit of a row over endorsing the book of a sort of right-wing shock jock in America. And this cancellation, sort of coupled with the culture wars and coupled with Marshall's own sort of faith, seemed to have pushed him in this quite contrary, quite conservative direction.
But that does seem to be the trigger.
Up this huge network.
That seems to be a trigger, would be the fact that his son no longer plays the banjo for Mumford & Sons.
It genuinely does seem to factor in, yes. I mean,
it's funny
and hurricanes and all that.
Right, yes, no, I like it. What is it? A butterfly flaps its wing in the Amazon. I mean, it's funny until you begin to get a grasp. I thought I knew roughly the extent of his reach because I do this stuff for a living, but it turns out I didn't know some of it. I didn't know about Unheard. I'm aware of it. I didn't know it was his creation. I knew he'd bought The Spectator, and he's a big backer of GB News, which is in the news today because it is viewers of that radio, of that television station, that are most likely to be completely misinformed about the reality of immigration. So how's he ended up with all this power?
I mean, GB News is an extraordinary thing. In the piece, I look a bit at Nigel Farage, who gets about 4 times the salary from GB News than he gets for being an MP. But more extraordinarily, he hosts a show for 4 hours per week on that air. And so the man who is, if you believe the polls, the favourite to be the next Prime Minister, got to host an hour's television reacting to the party conferences of his rivals. And as patronage goes, why would you ever donate to a political party when you can have a politician owing you that much? Sort of, let me stress, I mean metaphorically there. And of course, all of this is completely legal and kosher. But there is a network beyond that. Paul Marshall set up conferences that are attended by leading US Republicans, by speakers from around the world. He's got think tanks. He donates to other think tanks. And I did this by going through accounts and going through documents. And when I started writing this, I warned the editors that, hey, you know, it's bigger than GB News. I might need 2,000 words here. And then I went back to them a week later and said, you know, I might need 3,000, then 4,000. And in the end, this special report, 7 pages of the magazine, it's just the number of organisations he controls is extraordinary. And of course, you hear conservative and reform politicians talk about people like George Soros, the billionaire philanthropist who's donated to liberal causes, or they sort of talk about this left-wing network. We've had nothing of the scale of what Paul Marshall has built in the UK. This is unprecedented.
What do all of these arms have in common? What is the common cause?
So you have a real shared cast of characters across it. Marshall calls himself a classical liberal.
Oh, Lord.
But he says that is firmly embedded in Judeo-Christian values.
That's a meaningless phrase, we should be clear. I mean, it is simply a way of demonising Islam, which he also has a relationship with historically. I remember when Hope Not Hate found his Twitter activity was full of likes and shares of stuff that was very negative towards Muslims.
Of some quite extreme Islamophobic content, yes. And he actually stepped down as the chair of the ARC chain of academies, which he founded, and we should be honest, are a very good chain of schools. He actually still has some involvement with those, which, given his views, is perhaps a bit worrying. But he hasn't placed all of his bets on reform or the Conservatives. He's kind of made himself the power broker across both. And because he's got TV channels, he's got magazines, he's got conferences, he's got think tanks, he funds a little unit that's based out of Oxford University. It's not formally part of the university, called the Pharos Foundation, named for the Great Lighthouse of Alexandria. And that's hosted people like Dominic Cummings in the Sheldonian saying the state needs to be ripped apart. And so there's this whole ecosystem of very different looking organisations that shuffle around the same faces and mean that you can essentially, if you spot some talent, you can make a star. That's the kind of system that brought people like Charlie Kirk to prominence in America. That's the kind of way you can fund talent and shape it to your ideology and your political ends. It's new here. You either owned media or you owned think tanks or you sort of had this cultural power. Marshall, in a decade, has built something kind of unprecedented. It is quite an impressive operation.
Well, it's profoundly impressive. And the umbrella under which all of these things congregate, is it the same old story? Is it simply a form of nativism coupled with a deep belief that public money, very rich people really resenting the fact that their taxes are used to support people who aren't rich?
Yes, I think they would say low tax, pro-enterprise, community cohesion, etc. Yeah. But there is a real arc of, there are a lot of speakers who are very sceptical about immigration and Islamophobia. I think a lot of people feel GB News represents a direction. He describes GB News as centre-right to the BBC's centre-left.
Wow.
God knows where that puts the centre. But we don't have anything that really, in the way we restrict political donations, we have lots of concerns. We don't want money in UK politics. Voters have said that again and again. We don't want elections like America's, which cost $2 billion. And Marshall, in the way he set everything up, has found ways to hugely fund and influence politics that are completely allowed under the rules, but maybe were just never conceived of by the people who wrote them. And if this is how politics is going to work now, then we either, just for politics to be fair, even if you agree with Marshall, if you don't have billionaires who will fund other parties and other ideas, we will be monopolised by this. And so we either need to decide that this is the future and anyone who doesn't agree with Marshall's agenda needs to tool up, or we need to look at this and go, hey, the rules weren't meant to allow this sort of stuff, and we need to change the rules.
I mean, it's a brilliant read, as you say. It got bigger and bigger the more that you dug into it, and people like me can cannibalise the hard work that you do and turn it into, nifty points. I would urge everybody to read it and to either subscribe to the New World online or take out a print subscription as well if you're old school like me. One line I'm fascinated by, James, and you know that this is a subject of enduring fascination to me, because if there is a big gang and there is a big group, I never get invited to it. He said recently, what I was frankly unprepared for was the determined, organised, devious nature of the opposition I would face. Who is he talking about?
So he listed a bunch of his bad guys here, who he likens to playground bullies, are a bunch of charities.
Right.
And one of them was Hope Not Hate. And funnily enough, in the speech that he's giving there, he never explains why Hope Not Hate targeted him, because I don't think he wanted to talk about the tweets that he'd liked. But the other group was Stop Funding Hate, who asked advertisers to boycott GB News because of what they saw as the anti-immigration content, the Islamophobic content on there, etc. That's an exercise of free speech. That is someone with a lot less power, a lot less money, a lot less influence than him, trying to use their voices. And he called that bullying. And he actually said a bit later in that same address, it would take a brave CEO not to advertise on GB News now. Now, I don't know how he meant that, but that reads like a threat to me.
Yes, and they are both relatively tiny organisations that rely entirely upon public funding, public donations to survive.
It says a lot about the grievance culture that he sort of paints something that really is run on a shoestring. I mean, far less than any of his operations, low salaries.
I'm always fascinated.
He's the victim.
Yeah, so at least Gary Lineker and Carol Vorderman get a day off. It's usually them that get accused of leading some sort of massive resistance movement against against the most powerful media owners in the world, often, but in this case in the country. We're out of time. We're already late for the news. Is there anything that I should have asked you about that I haven't? Is there something that you want to bring to my listeners' attention that you feel needs to be aired?
I think you've got the crucial points. I think you have to look at this as a system, though, not as individual things. It's not just GB News. It's not just the think tank. It's not just the conferences. Remember, it's the same people and the same network, and that tells you that there's a real operation here.
And in case there were any doubt about the answer to this week's today's missing word round, regular viewers of blank most likely to overestimate level of net migration. The answer is, of course, GB News, which continues to hemorrhage money. James Paul of the New World, which you can find in all good news agents or outlets, or you can log on to New World, thenewworld.co.uk. Thank you. It's an extraordinary piece. That's that line again from Batman Begins, isn't it, that we talked about yesterday, because I finally got around to watching the film 20 years after it came out. It's all about keeping the bad people rich and the good people scared.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 7 minutes after 11. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we return to a question that I found surprisingly, I don't know quite what the word is. It's nothing fun about it, because it is a story that hinges upon hideous allegations, but it also speaks to universal dynamics of family. I don't know if you saw the footage of Andrew Windsor at the funeral, I think, of the Duchess of Kent, where he sort of sidled up to Prince William. And I mean, you can read too much into photographs, can't you, and facial expressions, but I think it's fair to say that Prince William was not very pleased to see him. And Andrew Windsor, it's a bit ridiculous, this thing I do, isn't it? Because, I mean, all of these titles are meaningless. And yet, I think there's some, it was such a profound point when you don't call him Prince Andrew, you just call him Andrew Windsor. Why am I calling the other fella Prince William? You know, he's just a sort of ludicrous hereditary bauble. But hey-ho, that's the world we live in. And I'm not particularly Republican at this stage of the circle of life. I'm very impressed by King Charles's performance so far. But anyway, I'll carry on doing it because I think it's right on, man. Andrew Windsor. And you realise that he is pursuing a cause that not many families will be unfortunate enough to recognise, in that you have got a pariah in your midst. But because it would upset mum, you can't actually ban him from the premises. Except that, of course, no longer applies in this case, in that the late Queen is no longer with us. But Andrew Windsor and his wife, who are both now more disgraced than it is possible to be without opening up a whole new category of disgrace, because the fondness that they displayed for Jeffrey Epstein after many of his crimes were known is off the charts. Emily Maitlis talking about how one of the messages Andrew Windsor sent to Epstein after he got out of jail was talking about how they will play again. He was looking forward to playing together again one day. Oh, man. I've got a pretty hearty constitution, but that turns my stomach. Sending a message like that to somebody who was known to, had already been convicted of soliciting. And his wife, Sarah Ferguson, sending messages to him after his disgrace, after his convictions, talking about how sorry she is for having to publicly disown him, offering up a frankly ludicrous defence that she was worried that he might sue her. Because, the world is full of people like Epstein successfully suing people like Sarah Ferguson for saying that she doesn't want to be friends with him anymore in public. But in private, oh no, let's stay friends. Can't wait to play with you again. So it's impossible to exaggerate how much shame Andrew Windsor has brought on his family. And yet, it got worse today with the publication of a memoir by the woman who accused Andrew Windsor of having sex with her when she was 17 years old, for which she reportedly was paid $15,000. And the details, I mean, if you've got kids in the car, you should probably put the Teletubbies on for 2. I'm showing my age there, aren't I? Put Bluey on for a couple of minutes, or put on some, improving audio books or the Times Tables. We used to have the Times Tables on CD. Do young people know what CDs are? I doubt it. Anyway, this is grim. So if the kids are in the car, don't cover their ears, because then you'll be taking your hands off the steering wheel. But you take my point. The book, and she took her own life in April, this woman, details her account of the night the Duke of York allegedly sexually abused her in March of 2001. He has always denied her allegations, but he did settle a civil lawsuit which involved the handing over of millions of pounds of his late mother's money, while, I have to stress, while denying any wrongdoing. And she writes that he believed having sex with me was his birthright, and that, oh, God, I'm sorry for bringing this to your attention, but there is a point to it, I promise. He was particularly attentive to my feet, caressing my toes and licking my arches. She recalls how excited she had been when Ghislaine Maxwell, who was jailed in 2022 for trafficking young girls to the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein, told her she would be dining that evening with Andrew. She describes feeling like Cinderella about to meet a handsome prince. When Andrew arrived at Maxwell's London house, they played a game that Maxwell enjoyed, Jouffret claimed, asking guests to guess her age. And Andrew guessed correctly, remarking, "My daughters are just a little younger than you." She claimed she then slept with the Duke that night, which he has denied, and was paid $15,000 by Epstein for servicing the man the tabloids called Randy Andy. That's a quote from Virginia Jouffret's memoir. And he still keeps popping up like the proverbial bad penny. He retains his title. He is still officially called the Duke of York, and he retains the title of Prince. And a palace source told the Times, "We're certainly not grinning and bearing it. We're certainly not grinning and we're not bearing it, says a palace source. We're taking the fundamental issues extremely seriously. It is very much not the case that the palace is turning a blind eye or a deaf ear to it all. We are taking every fresh allegation extremely seriously and reviewing the potential options for further censure, while being aware that significant steps that can be taken have largely been enacted. It is a source of immense frustration and concern that there continue to be holes picked in the Duke's story, which means they know it's probably not over, or there is more to come out than has currently occurred. I mean, the worst bit, really, is probably that line about looking forward to playing together again. How do you send that to someone who's been convicted of these kind of crimes? It is actually beyond me. But what I want you to do, if you don't mind, is focus on the notion of him turning up at things. So he lives in Windsor Great Park, I think, and if there is like an event, he can sort of just turn up. And if the police had been ordered to keep him out, I mean, it's a fascinating question. I don't know whether you've ever come across anybody like this in your life, who is just, I mean, it's become quite commonplace now in politics, I suppose. But on this kind of level, everybody knows what he should be doing, which is doing a John Profumo or something, or living out the rest of his life in a mixture of obscurity and altruism. His ego won't allow that. So he keeps turning up. He keeps turning up. I mean, didn't he sort of march up the aisle at the late Queen's funeral? He turned up at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. If there's a public event involving the royal family, he's not going to slide in through a back door. He's going to march up the front in front of all the cameras. And then, it's not often I find myself feeling sorry for Prince William, but then he sidles up to his nephew and appeared to whisper some sort of joke or some warm words in his... Imagine turning around. I can't do a blooming phone-in on whether your uncle's ever been accused of sex crimes. That would just be weird. But if he had been, and he paid off the woman who accused him while insisting repeatedly that he had not done anything wrong, you probably wouldn't want him at the next family buffet. You wouldn't want him down the Harvester, would you, for the all-you-can-eat carvery next weekend? So, I mean, you can come at this. Don't forget the seriousness of the subtext, which is this poor woman, no longer with us, according to her own account, chewed up and spat out by these men. But what on earth should he do? How do you solve a problem like Andrew Windsor? What should the king do? What should the family do? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. I would do more than they have done, right? Oh dear. I mean, some of this stuff is absolutely unbelievable. He didn't break off the friendship. He said he had to fly to New York in 2010 to break off the friendship because that would be the honourable thing to do. But guess what? February 2011, after a picture had been published of him with his arm around Virginia Giuffre, he wrote to him again. "I'm just as concerned for you," he wrote. "Don't worry about me. It would seem that we're in this together and we'll have to rise above it. Otherwise, keep in close touch and we'll play some more soon." Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I counted them. We'll play some more soon. So, this is after his conviction. After he had been convicted of trafficking. Andrew wrote to him again saying, "Keep in close touch and we'll play some more soon." And he signed it A, which is also signed off with HRH, the Duke of York, KG, Knight of the Garter. So, 17 minutes after 11 is the time. Harvesters don't do carveries. And anyway, he prefers Pizza Express. I just want you to tell me what you think he should do. The king. Because Andrew's not going to do the right thing, whatever that... I don't know how to articulate this, because don't have analogies in our lives, do we? I mean, you might have a family member who's an absolute nightmare, but you can't not invite him at Christmas, and he'll get drunk and he'll be racist and he'll shout at your nan. But you kind of... It's not like that. It's of a wholly different order. And it damages the public perception. They're doing a superb job, the royal family, of distancing themselves from him. I don't think he's polluting their brand anymore. But he's turning up at their parties as if he's done nothing wrong, as if he's normal. What can they do? What would I do? I don't know. I mean, he's the bloody king. He must be able to do something. Strip him of his titles immediately. You're not a prince anymore. It can't be that hard, can it? Any constitutional historians listening? It's going to be like the first hour of this. 0345 6060 973. What would you do? There you go. Let's do it like this. You can't chop his head off. That's not allowed anymore. I think you'd need an act of parliament to introduce the Tower of London as a place of incarceration, and you'd probably have to have a trial. It's not like the good old days. They could lock you up there just because you didn't like the colour of your socks. So if you were King Charles, there's two ways into this. There's a slightly less responsible way and the responsible way. What do you think King Charles should do about his ludicrous brother, his hideous brother? 0345 6060 973. Remember that Fredo was allowed to stay alive until Michael Corleone's mum died. So what do you think King Charles should do about his hideous brother? And on a slightly less serious note, what would you do if it was you? What would you do if you were at your auntie's funeral and your your creepy uncle turned up on your shoulder and sort of behaved like everything was okay? That's why I like this story so much, which is an odd thing to say, but I like the dilemmas that it poses, because we all think it's, obviously you've got to do something, but what? Whether it's the constitutional question of what the king can do, or the notion of what Prince William and the rest of them can do when their creepy uncle turns up at the party. What do you do? The whole world's cameras are pointing at you, right? You're being all sombre and respectful because you're saying goodbye to a much-loved family member. Your creepy uncle turns up on your shoulder in full view of the world's cameras, whispers something quite possibly inappropriate in your ear, and you're not allowed to chin him. So what do you do? So the big question, constitutional, and then the little question, which would be event-based. He's come again. I bet that goes around the room like, he's turned up again. Do you think he's going to come to this one? I bet that's what they're on the phone to each other in the back of their carriages. Do you think he's going to turn up? Yeah, apparently he's just left Windsor. He's on his way to church. God, I don't believe it. He's not going to come in through the front door, is he? Yeah, well, it looks that way. He's coming up the stairs. He's coming up the stairs. Oh, my God, he's talking to William. What would you do in those circumstances? So there's the constitutional question of what the king should do, can do, you'd like them to do, 0345 6060 973. And then the behavioural question. You're not allowed to push him down the stairs of the church. What do you do when he turns up like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth? It's 11:21. Your thoughts on this? Please.
James O'Brien on LBC.
There is a precedent, and I'm not going to give you the examples until a little later this hour, of taking away some of the honours that he enjoys. But how do you deal with a problem like Andrew Windsor? And two ways into it. Number one, pretend you're the king. What should the king do? And number two, what about whether you're Prince William or it's unlikely to be Prince Harry? Isn't it extraordinary how Prince Harry gets more of a kicking from the UK media than his uncle? Absolutely extraordinary. Of course, Harry has made the cardinal error of telling some very uncomfortable truths about the UK media. But the idea that on any level, something really gross, wasn't there, about him being dressed in civvies when he always remember that footage of him in Afghanistan, just running away from the interview when an alarm went off, I think at Camp Bastion. And I know it's not unique to him. This is a mark of a good serviceman or woman. But that unquestioning, almost reflex reaction, there's danger, right, we're running towards it. And he couldn't wear his actual uniform. Was it at the Queen's funeral? There was some big event where he couldn't actually wear his military uniform, where his family members. And Andrew, to be fair, has done service, did service in the Falklands. But the rest of them have got more medals than Robert Mugabe. So extraordinary. And the bloke who we've seen running towards danger in actual Afghanistan is having to wear one of the suits he probably picked up in TK Maxx. That's not a diss. I love TK Maxx. And like Harry, I buy most of my clothes there. 24 minutes after 11 is the time. Should we go on with the phone in? Yes, we shall. Patrick's in Lambeth. Patrick, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. I just wanted to pick up on your comments about Prince Andrew. So I've been thinking about what the King should do, and here's where I start. I think you have to go back a bit. So the King has obviously tried to freeze Andrew out by cutting the financial purse strings.
Yes.
He wants him out of Royal Lodge. That's pretty obvious. Andrew needs a lot of money to fund his lifestyle at Royal Lodge. The idea was he'd run out of money, he'd have to come to the King with a begging bowl. But of course, what Andrew has done, it seems, is he's obtained funding from elsewhere to support that lifestyle. As long as he can pay the bills and observe his obligations under that lease, he can't be moved out of Royal Lodge. So I think the King missed a trick there. What he should have done at that earlier point, it seems to me, is actually sat down with Andrew and said, look, I'll fund your lifestyle at Royal Lodge, but in exchange, you've got to stop dealing with dodgy people elsewhere, and you've got to keep a very, very low profile. He didn't do that, clearly. He missed that trick. The ship has sailed, and now I think what's going on is there is another set of risks around Andrew sitting there, around where on earth is this money coming from that's running his lifestyle. And we know from past history that he has dealt with people in some very, shall we say, exotic jurisdictions.
Exotic and interesting people, we can say.
Indeed.
Yes, yeah, I mean, you understand why I'm sensitive to... I know that you sound like a clued-up chap who isn't going to say anything questionable or actionable, but I prefer to err on the side of excessive caution at these moments, Patrick.
And I won't mention the names, although a number of them are in the public domain.
No, of
so anyone
course.
who's interested can just go and look them up.
And there is mystery surrounding how he manages to sustain his lifestyle, because, as you say, the expectation was, when he was cut off from receiving any public money about 6 years ago, the expectation was that he wouldn't be able to sustain or to keep the house that he lives in, and he's still there.
Exactly so, and I think that strategy on the part of the King and the courtiers around him has failed.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Here's what I think the King should do. I mean, it might be a case of thin gruel, but I think it's worth a punt. I think he should sit down with Andrew and just say, look, Andrew, this has got to stop. You're damaging the royal brand, the royal institution, and this could lead to all sorts of very unpleasant places. I'll fund you. I think it needs to be generous so that you can live the lifestyle that you want to live, but you're going to have to keep a very low profile, and you're going to have to stop dealing with anyone in the wider world who might have, should we say, dubious credentials. And I think that's probably about all the leverage he's got right now.
No, there's a few things he can do. He can take things away. There are precedents for degradation,
okay,
is the technical word, but I'm saving that until a little bit later in the hour.
Can I talk about that? Because I just think, A, number one, the King is not a resentful person, and B, okay, he could potentially take away the Order of the Garter from Andrew, but to remove his title as Duke of York would involve Parliament. As you say, there are precedents, but those precedents mostly go back to World War I with German relatives of the new House of Windsor. I don't know. I just don't think that's where the King's mindset is. Prince William might be different down the track.
Yeah? Do you know that he's still allowed to host shooting parties around the Windsor estate?
I did.
You know your stuff, don't you?
I did. I think at the end of the day, what he does in private on the royal estate, I think he's just allowed to continue it. I mean, he goes up to Balmoral, but again, he has to keep quiet. I think Fergie's allowed to go up there as well.
Yeah, they can have private holidays there, yes, and at Sandringham.
Because it's out of the public eye, I think he will be allowed to do that, and I would submit that it's in the King's interest to allow that to carry on. I mean, obviously subject to the fact that we don't want Andrew inviting dodgy characters to shoots at Sandringham, as we know happened in the past. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. It's relevant to the conversation we had in the last hour, actually, if I'm thinking correctly. How he is funding his lifestyle at Royal Lodge a year on is said to be a mystery to Charles. It's reported in the Times today, and that speaks directly to what you say. So you solve that mystery by but then again, it doesn't. And I need to choose my words carefully now. Doesn't all this hinge upon him being trustworthy? And the other slight flaw in slight sort of grit in your oyster is that you can say I'm going to keep a really low profile, but he has no control over what's going to come out next. It looks as if Ghislaine Maxwell is briefing a friendly journalist who gets straight on the phone to the Mail on Sunday, and then these front page stories about the latest thing to emerge from Epstein's records and archives is profoundly embarrassing for Andrew. So even if he is to be trusted on promising to keep a low profile, it could all blow up again next week.
They don't have control of the narrative.
No,
that's the problem.
exactly.
But what they can seek to do is try and control the narrative in relation to things that Andrew may be doing right now or might do in the future. That's what they've got to focus on, which is why I think paying him off to be quiet, in effect, is probably the least worst option for the king.
Although I suppose that ship might have sailed. It does offer up an entirely alternative analysis, but I can't quite see him agreeing to it if he has got income streams, secret, mysterious income streams that he's perfectly happy with, thank you very much, and they kind of give him a degree of independence and impunity from the orders or the instructions of his brother. God lordy. I presume, like me, you feel rather sorry for King Charles in this context, Patrick.
I do. I think I do. But equally, I do feel he made quite a bad mistake in not paying Andrew off. I think the strategy of freezing him out of Royal Lodge was not the best strategy, it seems to me. I think also King Charles, my understanding, I'm only going on what I read and hear, is that he's not big on conflict. And I actually think somebody probably needs to go and bang Andrew's head somewhat, because...
Well, that brings me to the second question, which is, should William have chinned him at the Duchess of Kent's funeral?
Well, I mean, that was extraordinary. I mean, why did nobody actually say to them that you need to come in through the side door? I mean, that was outrageous.
How do we know they didn't?
The Duchess of Kent.
How do we know they didn't?
I mean, it deflected attention away from her and her family on what was clearly meant to be about them on that day. It's inexcusable. I mean, again, it suggests a lack of judgment from Andrew and Fergie.
Well, that's very generous, Patrick. Thank you for your generous contribution. I had lots of interesting stuff there to pick over, and I suspect Patrick would know the answer to this question, so I didn't ask him because it would spoil the fun for the rest of us. Can you name... when I say that there is a precedent, who proves that should he actually want to, King Charles could take away titles from his brother? There's one in particular. There's an ancient chivalric honour known as the Order of the Garter, which Andrew still has. Degradation can occur. It hasn't been seen since the 18th century. That's the official act of degradation. But in the 20th century, 2 men had the honour removed, the Order of the Garter. Do you want to have a guess at who they were? I'll tell you after the very latest news headlines with Thomas Watts.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 11:35. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And I think I'll answer the question quite early because I normally forget to provide satisfaction with these little teasers before news bulletins or breaks. But it would be George V who just simply removed the Order of the Garter from... Well, Franz Joseph of Austria-Hungary. That's the sort of Emperor of Austria. Do you know why George V was so mean to his first cousin, a fellow grandchild or grandson of Queen Victoria? Yeah, because we went to war in 1914, which is why another sort of member of the extended family, Kaiser Wilhelm II, also had his Order of the Garter removed. Do you know who else was George V's first cousin? Tsar Nicholas II. You know when the weirdos start going on about how we don't teach proper British history anymore. I've long thought that if we actually taught history properly, imagine if you lost your dad in the First World War because 2 cousins couldn't come to an agreement. It's extraordinary, really. The best depiction I've seen of it is in one of the Kingsman films, when they get the same actor to play all 3 characters. So superb. It's a virtuoso performance from Tom Hollander, not the lad who played Spider-Man, from Tom Hollander, who plays... Does he play Franz Joseph, Kaiser Wilhelm and George V in that? I think he does. It's a brilliant film. The King's Man. I love that series. It's time we had another one. Anyway, I digress. What do you do with the... So, there's a cheeky element to this question, because obviously Prince William can't chin his uncle at a funeral. I mean, he supposedly got a bit fisty, didn't he, with his brother, according to Harry's account. But, I mean, what do you do? On the constitutional level, Robert Mugabe and Benito Mussolini have had honours removed, so you can do it. But in all seriousness, do you think Charles should put his brother on the same page as Robert Mugabe and Benito Mussolini? And then on a personal level, what would you do if you were at that let's not focus on a specific funeral. You're at a family funeral, you're a member of the royal family, and creepy Uncle Andrew turns up. What would you actually do? Because Patrick put it brilliantly. I can't believe he didn't come in through a back door. Just waltzing in there. What can you actually do in those moments? Because if you got the police to cart him away, or you turned his... that would be international news. I got some sympathy for the scenario. Barry's in Edgware. Barry, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello, Barry.
I was having a blissful moment this morning. We spoke about chemical castration a couple of months ago.
Well, on this subject?
No, on chemical castration.
Oh, I know, but you might have knitted the two together.
Well, I think that's one.
No. Let's not go there. That's what I was just guarding against. I tell you something that occurred to me when I took your call. Why has there never been any members of the royal family called Barry?
Because it's an Irish name, means spear in Gaelic.
Yeah, well, that's probably it then, actually. But I quite like a Prince Barry. King Barry's got a certain ring to it, hasn't it? King Barry.
Yeah, my son's called Barry and he hates it, believe me.
Barry the Second, we know him as. Prince Barry.
Yeah. Right, let's get down to business, James.
Sorry, King Barry.
He should speak to the Lord Chief Justice and keep away from it personally, and the Lord Chief Justice should have Andrew evicted from Crown property, and he should set up an order that he can't go anywhere.
It's not Crown property. It's his own house.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, well,
or he's got a massive lease on it. He pays for the house.
Well, on the other subject, he should actually be kept away from the royal family with a court order, and then he can go and live anywhere in the world. He can go off and do what the Duke of Windsor did, but he's a continuing sore on the royal family. It keeps coming up and up and up.
Yes.
And just on one more point, James, on the fact that he said he was in Pizza Hut in Woking.
Okay.
I've worked with colleagues who work with Andrew. Apparently he's a really arrogant, entitled person, one of the hateful royals. They would have a log. If he'd gone to Pizza Hut, they would have done a risk assessment on it. They'd have a log that he was there. So if he had gone to court, they would be able to prove he was there or prove he wasn't there. So
unless he'd slipped his security, which seems highly unlikely. I think I owe you an apology. It is part of the royal. It is part of the Crown estate. But if my memory serves, he has taken out a lease that would be legally August 2003. He took out a 75-year lease on it. So it would be legally difficult, I think, to break that lease, wouldn't it? Just because you've fallen out of favour.
He's the king.
Well, yeah, but we don't. But Barry, we don't want that. We don't want him to be able to do things that you and I can't do just because he's the king. That's why I like this topic, because we've got a sense that he's the blooming king. He should be able to do whatever he wants. But that's actually not the kind of society that we want to live in. Happily, we don't have a society where the king can do lots of things that we can't do. That's America.
Well, we're talking about his own brother and one of the royal family. I think he should do it. I think most of the public would admire the king for doing it. I think William will do it.
Well,
he's still alive.
Yes. Well, I don't know that he can. I don't know that if he's paid up the money. I don't know that you can chuck him out. Did you say Pizza Hut?
It's Pizza Hut in Woking, wasn't it?
No, Pizza Express. I got a message off Callum. It said, I can't believe you're airing this foul slander. And I thought, oh, Lord, what's Barry said that I haven't noticed? And then he said, it was Pizza Express, not Pizza Hut. I'm glad we cleared that up. 11:41 is the time. Regards to Barry Jr. David is in Welwyn Garden City. David, what would you like to say?
Well, King Charles should take a leaf out of his granddad's book. His granddad had problems with his brother. King Edward.
Yes.
And he banished him sent him to be the governor of the Bahamas.
Yeah, but that's a reward. And also, I mean, he just married a divorcee. He didn't bring it's all relative, isn't it, to the time?
Well, there was a lot of talk about him being pro-Nazi. Anyway,
it wasn't just talk. He was.
So he was sent to be governor of the Bahamas. Now, I don't think the Bahamas would accept Andrew, but maybe, how about the island of Rockall?
Yes, I like this. Or is there an uninhabited Orkney that could come to the nation's aid at this difficult time?
Yeah, well, at least he'd be banished from births, marriages, and
death. But what you're doing, I like your sense of humour, but you're highlighting the impossibility of coming up with a really meaningful plan to this. And what we don't know is whether or not anything is being held back through a sort of sense of residual duty. Another palace source telling the Times there is a sense of having a residual duty of care to him, albeit that there's very little left in Andrew's life to make it worthwhile punishing him further, because it's very occasional contact with a very small number of loyal friends and family. But the problem is then that he turns up at these big events, and then you've got the danger of him publishing a kind of tell-all memoir. Low on the list of things that courtiers worry about, but I mean, reportedly, he could certainly use the cash. How about the personal angle on it? If you're there, if you're on the steps at this funeral, and your uncle, who has brought enormous disgrace upon the family, and who I don't think it's over. I can't help thinking that there's more to come. What can you actually do in those moments to express your displeasure? Could you behave in a way that makes him think, well, I'm not coming to the next one? I sense you couldn't. I sense there's something about the thickness of his skin, or just the thickness of him, that makes it almost impossible to penetrate the mixed sense, the twinning of entitlement and victimhood. So it's poor me, poor me, poor me, aren't I magnificent? Right, I've got a question for you. I haven't watched all of The Crown, but it is a superb piece of television. There is one scene in The Crown involving the late Queen, Prince then now King Charles, and Andrew, his brother, and you have to have seen it for this to work. So you're exempt. You don't have to join in if you didn't see it. But there's one scene. I'll give you a clue. It's a Christmas scene, and it made me absolutely ache with sympathy for Prince Charles. It was quite a beautifully portrayed moment. It's probably completely made up, but it was just a moment of utter poignancy. And there is a special prize of a packet of Spangles to who, if I can find any, a Texan bar, if I can get hold of one, to whoever can correctly identify the scene in The Crown that made me ache with sympathy for Prince Charles as he then was, because of something that happened between him, his brother, and their mother, all right? And then we'll return to the question of what on earth Charles can do with this particular problem. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:48. I mean, it's not the same story by any stretch of the imagination, but we just don't know, do we? It's the worst kind of radio phone-in. You're supposed to do absolute certainty. You're not supposed to have thoughtfulness and nuance. I've got no idea what the government can do to chase down Michelle Mone and all the money that she owes us, you and me. I have absolutely no sympathy for her bleating victimhood, which is absolutely pathetic. But I bet, and of course, more attention will focus on her because she has a public profile, one that she was incredibly keen to cultivate, desperate to be a public figure. Rod Stewart had her number years ago, didn't he? There's a phrase I've never said before on the radio. But, I mean, you're talking about a VIP crony prioritisation system, and you know that a lot of people who walked away with millions of pounds will be, let's say, of a much more similar background to people like David Cameron and Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg than Michelle Mone is. So her claim of being a scapegoat is pathetic, and the reason why she gets so much attention is because she spent years demanding attention, so she has become an attention person. There'll be a lot of non-attention people who were getting very preferential deals, shall we say, on that ludicrous system of cronyism and I'd say corruption, but who are part of the inner circle, as it were, or even just part of the same social milieu as the people who were doling out the contracts. And I say it again, I said it at the top of the show. They were prioritising their mates and contacts over people with proven track records in those areas. It's a thing I still can't get my head around. I always think of St. Carol of Vorderman just saying to me, when it started, and she, of course, had a bit of history with Michelle Mone, but St. Carol of Vorderman said to me that you just found yourself thinking at that moment, when you were aware of something huge happening, but not aware of how huge it would be or what the details would involve. There are two types of people, two types of relatively powerful people in the world, right? There are the people who respond by thinking and saying, what on earth can I do to help? And there are people who respond by thinking and saying, how can I make a few quid out of this? Or even if it's not quids, it's just power or influence. What's in it for me? So here's global pandemic that's going to kill hundreds of thousands of people. Oh, my Lord, is there anything I can do to help? So Carol, for example, made her online maths school free. Not a huge thing, unless, of course, you had a child who was being schooled at home and you didn't have the wherewithal, the time or the knowledge to help them with their maths. That was her first thought. What can I do? What can I do? I wonder why she gets demonised by right-wing media. I just can't quite put my finger on it. And then Michelle Mone, who the Tories have revealed today will not have her whip renewed in the House of Lords. It doesn't take away her title, just takes away the whip, which used to be the worst nightmare of a huge number of Tory MPs. And she responds, or other people respond by going, what's in it for me? How can we get something out of this? What's in it for me? Global pandemic to leave hundreds of thousands of people dead. How can I help? Global pandemic to leave hundreds of thousands of people dead. What's in it for me? Let's think about that next time you're looking at the political contributions of the people who would be very much in the Michelle Mone mode in those moments, rather than the Carol Vorderman mode. Alice is in Northwich on the King Charles question. What have you got for me, Alice?
Well, I should just say I've missed the last few calls with sorting my phone line out. But what I would do with King...
hang on a minute. They weren't great, Alice.
Sorry?
They weren't great. I don't think you didn't miss much. I was on great form. I was on great form, but the calls were very fair to middling. You can listen back to live radio on the LBC app, of course, if you wanted to, but I wouldn't bother. Go on, carry on.
Oh, right. Well, if I were King Charles, I mean, first of all, I would remove all the honours that it's possible to remove, because these things seem to matter to
yes, they haven't
Prince
done
Andrew.
That yet. Yes, right.
And then the second thing is, I mean, we have a similar problem in my family. No titles involved, of course, and I was a child for most of this time. So what was done? This chap who was known by the adults to be a paedophile.
Oh my God! Well, to be clear, Andrew is not known by anyone to be a paedophile. He's been accused by Virginia Giuffre, and he gave £12 million of his late mum's money to her. But he maintains throughout that he has never done anything wrong at all. So I just made it 100% crystal clear that is a different scenario to the one that you're describing, albeit the notion of having shall we say, a persona non grata in the family circle is an analogy that works. So carry on.
Yes. I'm sorry, that was a slip-up there.
No, it wasn't. I'm being doubly careful. Just don't say the P word again.
Yes, I won't. So this just refers to this person in my family who was known by the adults to be a paedophile.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Right. So what the family did was they just totally ostracised him. Now, it didn't bother we children because we didn't like this chap anyway, so with that we were perfectly content. They just didn't speak. If he was anywhere in anybody's presence, they just didn't speak to him. And so what...
so he'd still turn up at things, would he?
Yes, he'd turn up, and indeed we'd go to their house because we liked the woman he was married to. We were very fond of her, but he was just totally ignored. It was as though he was a piece of furniture. And as I say, as children, it didn't bother us. It didn't seem to bother anybody, actually.
Just what an extra. I mean, could they do that though on the world stage with all the television cameras? But it might be even more effective the more cameras are pointing at. William kind of tried to do that, but the problem is he's still there. So it's why it's unique. It's a unique problem because it's the royal family. It's the most photographed family in the world, possibly.
Well, that's true, but at the same time, I think it might be even more effective on camera because if Prince William sort of made it plain that he was just totally ignoring him and it was just as though nobody was speaking, nobody was doing anything.
Literally turned his back. If he physically turned, if everyone literally turned their back on him whenever he arrived.
Absolutely.
I like it, Alice. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you got your phone line sorted as well. 11:55 is the time. A fascinating update, because I mentioned that this chap is the person I often turn to when I am confused by legal stories. He's a legal commentator called David Alan Green, who writes on Substack, and you can find him on Blue Sky. I'm a big fan, as he well knows. And he's come back to the story of the Chinese spying case. And I think this is roughly where we got to, against all the odds, by 11 o'clock. Against all the odds, and despite some of the calls to the programme, this is where we got to. Against all the odds, and despite some of the calls to the programme, and the abject ignorance of your humble presenter, this is roughly where we got to. David writes, yesterday this blog sought to make sense of the decision to drop the Chinese spying prosecutions on the information then available and averred, great word, and averred that both the positions of the government and the Crown Prosecution Service did not make sense. Now the government has published 3 witness statements. The picture now changes. The government's position now makes sense, and the CPS looks as if it made at least one serious mistake and possibly another. And that is why the desperation of some newspapers to pretend that Kemi Badenoch had a good day in the House of Commons yesterday, and one newspaper to pretend that Keir Starmer was possibly going to have to resign over this, are historic examples of footballification. Back to the King. Rich is in Anglesey. Rich, what do you reckon?
Hello, James, how are you? Yeah, just, well, first of all, can I just link a couple of stories? You were talking earlier about Michelle Mone.
No. I'm not being rude, but you can't, and that kind of thing has to be cleared with the producer because it's very, very legally fraught. So nothing personal, mate, but no.
That's fine. Okay, that's fine. No worries at all. But going back to Charles, I think it just proves how utterly useless and pathetic him and William are and the rest of our family.
Really? He's taken away all public money. He's been pretty strict. He's been ostracised.
Andrew's in a Royal Lodge that costs millions and millions of pounds to run.
But he's paid for it himself. I think they thought he was going to run out of money, and he hasn't. That's not Charles's fault.
Yeah, but Andrew's he's never worked. He was in the Royal Navy for a few weeks or a few months.
It was more than that. He served in the fire. Don't make me defend him, Rich. Honestly, it's just not fair. I can't. He was a proper member of the Royal Navy. It wasn't a sort of sinecure, and he did active service. He was in the Falklands, so you can't take that away from the fella.
I've got family members that are in the Royal Navy for 15, 20 years, and they certainly can't afford to live in the Royal Lodge. So, you know.
No, but they're not members of the royal family, you prune. I mean, obviously he's going to have more money than the average sort of serviceman, but in terms of what should Charles do now? Final answer.
Absolutely make it disappear.
Yeah, see, no one, you can't, this is 2 phone-ins where there is no answer. It's the opposite of what we normally do. We normally wade into the grey areas and spread light and illumination in our wake. But on these 2, there's not a lot he can do. He could go what I call full Mugabe and take away any title that they're entitled to take away. That's a good little turn of phrase. Take away any title they're entitled to detitle. I'd do that if I was King Charles, but he's not my brother. Maybe there is some residual sense of duty. Maybe they're worried about his mental health. There's all sorts of things that could be going on here. But this story will return because something will come out, something will emerge. Private Eye, very, very good this week on where these stories are coming from and how they are making their ways mysteriously onto the front of certain British newspapers. I don't think that tap has been turned off. So the question of what he can do remains very, very alive. More mysteries next. In fact, loads of them, because it is Mystery Hour.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Oh, is it that time of the week already? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need if you need satisfaction. That sounds like something you might read in a phone box. I mean, intellectual satisfaction, educational satisfaction, illumination. This is the hour of radio that reaches parts other hours of radio can never reach. I also need you to provide answers as well as satisfaction. The answers provide the satisfaction. If you hear someone else ask a question to which you know the answer and you can prove you know it, well, not prove you, but if it, you know, we're not going to doubt you because of your qualifications, for example. It's a very trusting feature, isn't it, Mystery Hour? I've never really noticed that before. Flies in the face of the modern mood. It's very, very trusting. It's built on trust. Trust and affection. Trust and love. That's Mystery Hour for me. Trust and love and knowledge. Trust and learning and love. If you've never listened to it before, as you've probably gathered, you're in for quite the treat. There's even a prize. It's not a packet of Spangles or even a Texan bar. Do you know, nobody... Oh, Linda got that right at the end. Linda got it right at 12:02. Nobody else got it right. There's a scene in The Crown and when Charles gave his mum a painting that he'd done himself of one of her favourite bits of Balmoral, I think. And he'd done the painting himself. He's quite a good watercolourist, by all accounts. And it was obviously something he hoped she would find very moving and be delighted by. And Andrew gave their mum a Billy the Bass talking fish. And that absolutely delighted her. And it's a great piece of filmmaking because the expression on Charles's face is a thing. It's such a perfect piece of acting as well. They're just absolutely heartbreaking. And it spoke of years, decades, lifetimes of favouritism and behaviours where Andrew would be favoured, apparently, and Charles would not. And what he loved and what he found he enthused about was not shared by his mother, who was, let's just be kind and say very down to earth, but she was much more tickled by... Do you remember those talking fish that you put batteries in? They were called Billy the Bass, weren't they? Billy Bass. Big Billy Bass. And he'd done a painting for... Anyway, well done, Linda. You win the non-existent packet of non-existent Spangles. The prize for the best contribution to Mystery Hour is a Mystery Hour board game. An entertainment of such magnificence that it's almost impossible to find the words to describe it. It is superb. And it is soon to be a collector's item because we are planning a new version of the Mystery Hour game, which won't technically be a board game. I like to build up a little bit of anticipation on that one. But the board game, ideally, you'll have both. Different questions, completely different games. But you can get hold of one yourself if you're not lucky enough to win one at mysteryhour.co.uk, and you can check the full terms and conditions for the prize that is on offer now at lbc.co.uk. So listen, quickly, it is essentially people ring in with questions. I used to have rules. I can't remember what they were, something about repetition and motoring, and then other people ring in with answers. But Becca and Elliot will be quite strict. They filter out the rubbish. I know what you're thinking. They don't always do a very good job. But I promise you they try. And that is why sometimes if you don't get through immediately, it's worth trying again quite quickly because they filtered out some rubbish and freed up a phone line. That was nicely put, wasn't it? That was okay. It was, yeah. All right, let's crack on. Sally's in Stourbridge. Question or answer? Hello, Sally.
It's a question.
Carry on.
And I hope I'm not going to babble with overexcitement because I've been wanting to ask this question for a couple of years.
Oh, happy days. Happy days. I've got some even more amazing news for you when you've finished.
Oh, right, okay. And I've been knocked back, and I am going to apologise in advance. It does sound a bit gross, but it's a genuine question, I promise.
Carry on.
So I have two granddaughters, 4 and 2-year-old, and I noticed when they both reached 2, they started picking their noses.
Oh, dear.
And I just noticed it. And then I thought, well, children pick noses, adults pick noses, and do more gross things than that. And I will go no further.
Yeah, we did that in the last hour.
Oh, okay. But with their noses, I'm talking.
Yes.
Is there an evolutionary reason? Because why would we do it?
Yeah.
Why?
This is quite odd. This is one of the reasons why I hate the internet, Sally. Because many moons ago, I formed a fairly comprehensive theory that picking your nose and eating it, because eating it is crucial, right?
I didn't want to go there.
No, I know. People having their lunch, all of that, but we're all grown-ups here.
Yeah.
Picking your nose and eating it was good for your immune system.
What?
Because it helped you build up like tiny little doses of germs and bacteria helps you build up resistance to bigger doses of germs and bacteria. And I worked this theory up to quite a pompous, you'll be surprised to learn, Sally, to quite a pompous level. I would defend it, I would argue it.
I think that sounds really sound.
And I would believe it, crucially, because it's very plausible, isn't it?
It is,
and
definitely.
Then along came the internet.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah,
go on.
You got it. And you could Google it, which I did, not today, because you're not allowed to Google.
I did too.
Well, and it's not good for you at all. In fact, it can be bad for you, because what you can do, and we learnt this during COVID, actually, is that your hands may actually transfer the bad stuff to your nostrils, and then that's how you might catch something. And, of course, you can scratch the septum, all sorts of things. So, no.
Okay, well, back to my question then.
Hey?
Why?
Oh, because it tastes nice.
Do we do... I don't know.
No, it is. Well, ask your granddaughter. Ask your granddaughters why they do it, and they'll say, it's yummy, Grandma.
No, they go, no, they pretend they're not doing it.
Yeah, well, that's because you've shamed them. That's because you've shamed them.
And my answer was, no, we're not allowed shaming granddaughters. I'm learning.
Good.
I looked it up, and it just said it was just a social thing. Children copied adults, and I thought, no, because adults do it secretly.
Yeah. No, it's because it tastes nice. And I'm sorry to everyone eating their lunch, but it's true. That is, and I'm not taking any further questions on it. Do you want to know some amazing Stourbridge-related news? I
definitely do, yes, please.
In The Guardian today, the finest newspaper columnist of our age, Mr. Adrian Childs. Do you know where he grew up?
I do, yes, Hagley.
Just up the road in Hagley. He's dedicated a section of his column to the shortest railway ride in Europe.
Oh, yes, I know. From the railway station to the town.
From Stourbridge Junction to Stourbridge Town, Sally. A journey I've made many, many times, but I had no idea how many times a day they do it. Do you?
No, I don't.
I may have misremembered, and I can't find the article now because I didn't realise that I was going to take a call from Stourbridge, so I didn't actually cut it out of the newspaper. But I've got
I'll look it up.
Well, yeah, 214 times a day. Does that sound plausible?
Oh, no, it sounds a tremendous amount.
I know.
There you go.
That's it. That's why it's a big deal. There you go. Stourbridge Junction to Stourbridge Town, a tiny little railway, 214 times a day, and surprisingly steep, as Sally would tell you. Anyway, round of applause for me, please, Keith. Thank you very much. Yeah, all right, no more nose picking. Sorry. Now, I don't know if you heard Sally there refer to potential indelicacy in her question, which was, there's no nice way of putting this, it was about bogies. I have received a text that belongs in the annals of texts that have been accidentally sent to the programme. No, definitely accidentally. There's no way this was deliberate. I don't know anyone called Rach. But the time of it, in case the person that sent it is listening, because they might not be, they might have hit the numbers completely randomly and by accident. It was sent at 11:57, and it involves someone called Rach. And Elliot, Keith, Becca and I are going to decide in the course of the next half an hour whether or not I should share it with you, because it is by some distance the most, I don't know what the word is, I mean it might be the funniest, but it's also pretty gross. Not in a smutty way, just in a dirty way. Yucky way. Not because dirty and smutty mean the same thing, really, don't they? So not in a dirty, smutty way, but in a way. And I can't believe someone has sent this to me by accident. But the thing that makes it special, I can't believe someone would send this text ever to anyone. There's absolutely no reason for one element of the detail contained within this text. And that's all the information I'm going to give you at this point. I am, however, going to tell you that I have now 3 phone lines free, which means if you've got a question, or if you can... Oh, no, there's no questions waiting answers, because I got that one right. If you've got a question and you've struggled to get through, hit the numbers now and I'll speak to you shortly. 0345 6060 973. The who's, the whys, the what's, the where's, the when's, the whithers and the wherefores. Graham's in South Ockenden. Graham, question or answer?
Hello, James. I've got a question, please.
Go on, then.
Why do we get 2 high tides every day when there's only one moon?
I mean, is that a mystery?
Yeah, it is to me.
Well, explain the well, clearly it is to you. Explain what makes you think that there should only be one tide because there's only one moon.
Well, because gravity only pulls one way, I can't understand why the tide goes away from the moon on the far side.
But because the world turns, doesn't it?
The world turns, but the sea doesn't. The sea bulges towards the moon, and it bulges away from the moon. This is genuine bafflement. It's not a weird conspiracy theory that I haven't come across before. No, it's genuine.
Yeah. So you would expect...
You get 2 bulges on each side of the Earth, and that causes the 2 high tides. One bulges towards the moon, and the other bulges away from the moon.
Does the sun pull the other way? Doesn't the sun pull the other way?
The sun does have an effect, but it doesn't affect that to that degree.
Are you sure?
Yeah, the sun causes spring tides.
All right. Well, I'll put it.
Anything to do with...
No, fair play, Graham. I'm putting it on the list, but I some questions just leave me a little bit. I don't know what the word is.
Befuddled.
Well, no, I'm always befuddled. I don't. I mean, why aren't there 4 tides or 5?
Well, because there's only one moon.
Yeah. And there's only 2 sides of the Earth. That's what I mean. You make my teeth hurt, Graham. You're making my teeth hurt.
I just can't figure out why you get 2 bulges when one of them goes away from the moon on the far side of the Earth.
All right, someone will know. Someone will know. And I'm embarrassed that I don't. And maybe that's where my discombobulation comes from. It's more a discombobulation than a befuddlement, Graham, I think.
Yeah, that's a better word than that one.
It is a nice word. It's one of my all-time favourites. It is 12:15. Can you solve Graham's mystery? Can you help Graham out? Why do we have 2 tides and only one moon? I don't understand the question. That's why I'm discombobulated. I'm not going to lie to you. And shall I read that text out or not?
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 12:16. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Graham wants to know why there are 2 tides if there's only one moon. I don't understand the question. So, I mean, it might be daft, it might be genius. I do not know. And I've added another mystery to it. Should I read out the most inappropriate text I've ever been accidentally sent? To which the answer currently is a resounding yes. But it's gross. It could put you off your dinner or your lunch, depending on what part of the country you're in. Amy is in Stourbridge. Honestly, this is ridiculous. 2 out of 3 calls from Stourbridge today. We'll be reminiscing about Markham Moody before the show is over, Amy. You're probably too young to remember Markham Moody.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
It was kind of like a W.H. Smith's for the West Midlands.
Ah.
Question or answer?
A question, please.
Carry on.
So my question is, I do a lot of baby laundry as I've got 2 young kids, and it's bothered me for ages. In the labels for the clothes, so I'm holding one right now so I can tell you what it says.
Yes.
It says the UK age is 12 to 18 months.
Yes.
Because baby clothes are in age size. But it says in Canada and US, the size of this same vest is 24 months. Are babies in Canada and the US just that much smaller?
I mean, that's word for word what it says. And you've come across this before. It's not an anomalous label.
Yeah, I got a little pile of about 5 different ones.
So UK age...
12 to 18 months.
Canada and US age 24 months?
Yes.
Which means we'd be bigger than American babies, which seems unlikely.
Yes. I mean, it's also got the Australian size, and they use numbers. So Australian size is 1, and the European size is 83. But Canada and US and UK all do size by months, and they're different.
Well, I've never... I mean, that's extraordinary. I can't... Usually you can sort of come up with half a theory, can't you, on this? But you can't. You don't... I mean... they don't know. They've got same birthdays. I think in some cultures you start at 1. Like you're 1 on the day that you're born. You don't start at 0. But that's not US and Canada, is it?
No, that's what I thought. This is plague. I've been wanting to call the show to ask this question for so long.
I'm not surprised. It might have a really obvious and easy answer, but we will hopefully find out for you. Why do babies' clothes have UK age 12 to 18 months and US age 24 months?
And can I also say hi to my mum, who's listening?
Of course.
And she listens all the time.
All right, so
hi,
I bet
Mum.
she remembered. What's her name?
Kim.
I bet Kim remembers Mark and Moody. Have you always been in Stourbridge?
Since I was 6.
Yeah, she'll remember. She'll remember Mark and Moody. I imagine she will. Anyway, you're on, and thank you. Hello, Kim. Have you been on the little railway lately?
No, I drive my daughter into town rather than getting the train.
214 times a day that train runs. I think like there and back, so 107. Do you know how much it costs? This isn't for you, Amy. This is just a general question for people fascinated by trains. £1.60 the fare. Adrian Charles's column in The Guardian today is, as ever, a thing of beauty. It's a funny little train, and he spoke to the drivers. I bet they were delighted to be interrupted. One of them said, it's a bit repetitive. It's literally the shortest railway line in Britain, and they do it 214 times a day. And when you had a chat with the train driver, his response, well, it is a bit repetitive. He also said, this is why I love Adrian's column so much. He was talking to them, and he said, when you were growing up and you wanted to be a train driver, is this what you had in mind? So he never stops being a journalist, Adrian Charles. He's on a little train in Stourbridge, and he's thinking to himself, there's a story here. So I'll talk to the operators, and I'll say, when you were growing up and you wanted to be a train driver, is this what you had in mind? And do you know what the train driver said? He said, I won't do the accent. Well, I could do the accent. Well, the thing is, he said, I never really wanted to be a train driver in the first place. There's nothing you could say to that. Thank you, Amy. Ian's in Aberdeen. Ian, question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on.
I've got a tree in my garden which drops its leaves in the autumn.
Yes.
Every year.
Yes.
And I sweep them up and put them in the garden recycling bin.
Ah, yes.
What I want to know is, does that actually damage the tree by depleting it of nutrients or carbon or anything else?
No.
You don't think so?
No. I mean, if you were mulching it and putting it around the tree, you might be giving it more nutrients and carbon, but there's no evolutionary purpose to the fallen leaves.
If I do that for 20 years and take the leaves away each year, you're saying that doesn't damage the tree in any way?
Absolutely fine. Ask me what my qualifications are.
What are your qualifications?
I have none whatsoever, but I'm 100% certain that you're not doing your tree any harm at all by clearing up the leaves. And you could have a compost heap, of course.
Yes, and there are other things you can do with leaves.
A bit more trouble than they're worth, to be honest. Yeah. But no, I'll leave it on the list. But I'd be absolutely flabbergasted if you're doing any measurable harm to your tree by sweeping up the leaves that have fallen around it. I really will. I mean, you damage your lawn if you don't sweep them up.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Oh, thank you. 22 minutes after 12 is the time. It's one of the biggest surprises of middle age for me is that I have found both an interest in and the patience for gardening. It's the patience for it that I find most remarkable, because I never had patience for anything in my life. But I garden now. I do a raised bed every year, and I've got some lovely stuff out of it this year. I'm doing sprouts. I've got about 6 sprout plants that I've got high hopes for, but you don't harvest them for a while, so I've got no way of knowing if they're working. Got some questions. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need if you want to add yours. And again, we've sort of sorted through the wheat and the chaff, and there is a little bit of space on my switchboard. If you're new to this, anything goes. The questions this week aren't necessarily illustrative of just how diverse they can be. It can be a who, a why, a where, a when, a wherefore, a whether. No, not a whether, but a whither. And the only real rule that we've had historically is that we don't like motoring questions, although that's getting quite hard to police. A bit like the conversation we might have tomorrow about driverless cars. Not really about whether they're a good idea or a bad idea, because that's a bit boring, but about whether or not the guy from the taxi union who thinks they'll never catch on. The psychology of it fascinates me. So do you see what I mean? That might be a psychology question rather than a motoring question. So we kind of got rid of that. Oh dear, I think I may have got the leaf question a bit wrong. So I'll definitely leave that on the board. And of course, if you can answer it, the number is the same. So questions and answers on the usual number. I look forward to the illumination that you are poised to provide. Ben is in Bristol. Ben, question or answer?
I have an answer for you, James.
Marvellous.
Can I just say that I've just come out for a quiet lunchtime walk, and I had no idea I was going to end up on national radio, but it's a pleasure to be here.
Happens to me every day.
But, I was just listening, probably 10 minutes ago, I heard the question about the moon and the tides.
Yes.
And it is a conundrum. I can see there's definitely confusion. The questioner is quite right. There's one moon, one satellite around the Earth, one natural satellite, which is affecting the tides. There's one Earth, as far as we know.
Yeah.
So the answer is all to do with averages. So it's about the average gravitational pull. So if you take the centre of the Earth as the average point, and if you could we could calculate the average pull towards the moon at that point.
Yeah.
Now the water which is, if you like, closest to the moon, that has a higher than average pull. So you get the bulge going up. That's one of the tides. But on the far side of the Earth, away from the moon, the gravity is actually less than the average. So if you like, the water falls away a little bit, away from the moon, and that explains the second tide, and that's why there are two tides, not one.
Because they both then go the opposite way.
Yeah, because the water's slightly closer to the moon. Yeah, it's getting pulled.
Oh, Graham,
the water
what a great
on the other
question.
side is falling away.
Good old Graham,
it's a really good question. Because there's some other interesting stuff around it. If I've got time to share.
Yeah, of course, Philly. But I don't know how long is your walk scheduled for.
Well, okay. The walk will be longer, but I'll keep this short. So there used to be tides on the moon because it wasn't always solid. It was actually fluid to a degree, molten. And in the past, the moon was spinning relative to its orbit, but the Earth essentially acted as a brake on the moon, and that's why one face of the moon always points to us, the near side of the moon. So we have a near side and a far side. And the moon is doing exactly the same to the Earth, because if you could imagine those two bulges, imagine the two bulges as fixed in space, the Earth spinning underneath. So wherever you are on the Earth, you see two tides, but you're doing the moving. The high tide and the low tide are sort of fixed in one frame, and that's acting on a brake. So the moon is actually slowing the Earth down by fractions of a second per century, but it is measurable. So one day, very distant future, there will be one face of the Earth pointing to the moon, as there is the moon to the Earth, and if you were standing on the Earth at that time, you would either have the moon always above your head, or you'd never see the moon at all.
You'd never see the moon at all. Wow, what a perfect answer. Qualifications?
Originally a physicist a very long time ago. I still work in the climate space, but I keep track of these things. But yeah, a physicist is the core answer.
Perfect answer, and a perfect question from Graham, to whom I owe a mitigated apology, because I just expressed uncertainty about the quality of the question, which Ben has now summarily removed. Round of applause for Ben. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your walk, Ben.
Will do, thank you.
Am I keeping you company for the whole thing or not?
Yeah, I'm putting my headphones back on.
Okay, pressure's on. The pressure's on now. Thank you, Ben. Matthew's in Richmond. Matthew, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on, Matthew.
I fear it's not as interesting or as erudite as the question and answer you just...
mate, this is Mystery Hour. Sometimes what seems erudite turns out to be absolute toot, and what seems to be absolute toot turns out to be absolutely fascinating. So who knows? Let's roll the dice and see.
Yeah. So my question is about loan words from foreign languages.
Oh, yes.
So I know you're more interested in Greek than Italian, but so why, especially with Italian words, do we sometimes use plurals rather than singular, and singular rather than plural? So you can walk into a coffee shop and ask for a cappuccino, or two cappuccinos.
Yeah.
That's obviously a singular. Cappuccino is singular.
Yeah.
And then you can ask for a panini.
I think I know this.
Okay. I trust you.
Well, I mean, there won't be a particularly highfalutin answer to the question. And, I mean, you're a bit pretentious, or Italian, if you ask for cappuccini, aren't you?
Yeah, I suppose so.
I don't know that we'd go... Is it cappuccini would be the plural of cappuccino?
Well, I mean...
I presume so.
I've been a musician for many years, and I know that you talk about timpani.
Yes. And, I think about the menu. Leave the orchestra. and think about what's on the sign above the counter in Bar Italia. And it's going to say cappuccino, £1.50. Back in the day. I mean, these days you're not going to get any change, not going to get much change out of £3 or £4 quid.
Yeah.
Cappuccino, espresso.
Yeah.
And then on the food menu, it will say panini. It won't say panino. And because you added an S to the O, but you'd add an S to the I as well. So we pluralise the plural. We do a double plural on it because the word, we don't know whether the word is plural or singular because we don't speak Italian. So if you put panini on the board, I'm going to ask for 2 paninis, which is like asking for two panini.
Yeah. And if you walk into the wrong sort of shop, there might be an apostrophe in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And rarely would you see a panino. So it would be we sell panini, which doesn't make sense to the English because there's no S on the end of it. So you actually sell paninis.
Yeah.
And cappuccinos. So they decided to call it a cappuccino because it's a cappuccino bar, not a cappuccini bar. So it's not as mysterious as we would actually originally think, is it?
Well,
or is it? You're not happy?
No, I take your explanation, but I just wonder why some things are plural and some things are singular. Because
back in the day when Rocco Forte and his fellow members of the Italian diaspora arrived in this country and opened their milk bars and introduced us to elements of Italian cuisine and drinks, they put on the drinks board singulars and on the food board mostly plurals.
Well, I mean, is that to sell more of the plurals?
No, it's just because that's the way the mind works. We sell paninos. And would you like... So a cappuccino, £5.50. Panini... I mean, if you come up with... anyone's got a better answer than this, I'll give them a packet of Spangles. But but I can't see what else it would be.
A packet of Spangles or a packet of Spangles?
Spangili is what the Italians call it. Spangini. I'll put it... I quite like the question, but I don't know that there's a proper mystery here, because it might just be because that's how we did it. You know, we put the cappuccino, panini... on the... Well, anyway, it's on the board, loan words. And singulars and plurals. Still... Oh, hang on. Yes? Thomas Watts is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:34 is the time. Would you like me to read out the most inappropriate text I've ever been accidentally sent on the programme, with the caveat that it's a bit rude, not in a smutty way. I haven't had a single no yet, but I have had a couple of corrections. I got the wrong Forte. So it's Charles Forte who started Trust House Forte and sort of was one of the pioneers of bringing Italian catering to this country. So my apologies for that. Questions that need answers. When we borrow words from other languages, most notably in this case Italian, why do we confuse our singulars and plurals? So you'll see cappuccino on a menu, but not panino. You'll see panini on a menu. Should Ian leave the trees that fall off his tree on the ground around the tree, or should he rake them up? Is there a nutritional difference? Is there a benefit to leaving the trees in place? What on earth is going on with baby clothes? That's not the question. Amy in Stourbridge attests, and I have no reason to doubt her, that all of the baby clothes in her possession contain labels that say UK age 12 to 18 months, US and Canada 24 months. I have absolutely no theory on why that would be. I cannot for the life of me think why it would be. Graham got a brilliant answer to his question from Ben, and Sally got a brilliant answer to her question from me. Sam's in Amersham. Sam, question or answer?
Hi, James.
Hello,
it's a steward's inquiry, I'm afraid.
Which one?
About the leaves falling from your...
I didn't take it. Let me consult with my crack team. Did I take a round of applause on that one? No, I didn't. So it doesn't need to be a steward's inquiry.
Fair enough,
no, thank you.
Enough.
Carry on.
Well, I just called in because I disagreed with your answer.
Fair enough.
So leaves falling from a tree, in nature, they are taken back into the soil by worms and break down, improving the texture of the soil, and taken back up by the tree as nutrients. So yes, if you continually remove them year after year after year, you are depleting the soil and the tree's nutrient base.
I got that completely wrong then, didn't I?
Sorry about that, but yeah, slightly.
Well, no, not even slightly. You're too kind. Completely and utterly.
My recommendation would be, yes, sweep them off the lawn, but sweep them into the planting beds or wherever you've got trees. And
so should I pack the base of my trees with the swept up leaves?
Leaving a gap between the stem, so the trunk.
The trunk.
And the leaves, so don't create a ring that's absolutely packed tight around the trunk.
But you should give them a little bit of a sprinkle. Qualifications?
Yes, I'm a qualified garden designer, landscape designer.
Oh, how cool!
And award-winning. So yeah. Well, we spoke a while ago, just before I did my Chelsea Flower Show garden.
Of course, yes, I remember. And that's where you won an award.
Indeed, and I've won another one since, so yeah.
Yeah, now you've got a mystery round of applause as well to go with the last one.
Much.
It's your mantelpiece. You're going to need a new mantelpiece if it carries on like this, Sam.
Indeed, thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. I feel that someone as august as that in the world of garden planning, it would have been a bit inappropriate to ask her when my sprouts need harvesting, wouldn't it? But I am. When will I know? Because at the moment they're very healthy-looking plants, but I can't see any sprouts. Small baby or other. Usually when you're growing stuff in your raised beds, you can see the embryonic versions of the thing that you're going to harvest later. Am I just growing? It happened with rhubarb. I didn't realise you were supposed to leave rhubarb for a year and then harvest it the year after. Anyway, someone might know. Harry's in Flynn. Harry, question or answer?
I've got a question for you, James.
Carry on.
So I've got a few tattoos. I've got my full chest tattooed. I've got a full back piece. And then I've got a few small ones on my ribs.
What have you got on your back?
Oh God, I don't actually know what it is. It's like some.
Well, you've never checked. You've never checked.
Well, I can't see it.
No, that's what I was thinking. That's fair enough. I mean, what does anyone know what they've got tattooed? You know what you asked for, right? You've got no idea. You've got no idea whether you got it or not.
Yeah. So hopefully I got what I asked for, but I don't know actually what I asked for. So.
Go on. What's your question?
So, what I've discovered is the tattoos hurt on one side of the body more than they do on the other side.
Nah.
No, honestly, they do.
Really?
Yeah, and it on the chest, because I've always done it in two different sessions. So my chest, one was an absolute doddle.
Yeah.
The other side, I was in absolute agony.
Really?
And it was the same with the back as well. Yeah.
Which side was it?
And so my right side hurts more.
I mean, I don't know where I derive the confidence to have a crack at something I know less than nothing about. But this is what I'd do if I was a snake oil salesman. Ready?
Go on.
Oh yes, okay. You're right-handed, aren't you, James?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, so because you're right-handed, that side of your body is more developed than the left-hand side of your body because you use it a lot more. You kick with your right foot, you eat with your right hand, you scratch with so your right hand. Just a slight difference in skeletomuscular development on the side of the body that you use more, and that means that there is less fat. Which, although you couldn't actually see this physically, because that would be weird, if it were to be measured, you are leaner on your right-hand side because you use those muscles a lot more, and that means that there is more pain when you have a tattoo on your right-hand side because the layer of protective skin, the dermis, is thinner.
I think that's a great answer.
That's how I could be a politician with my eyes shut. I could do it. Go on.
You could.
Yeah.
You could. However, I do go to gym, and my left side, even though it's my weaker side, is actually stronger.
Oh. Well, you're just saying that.
You're not getting a round of applause for that.
You're just saying that.
No, honestly, I'm not. Maybe that's another question for the Mystery Hour next
All right.
week.
No, I love it. What have you got on your front? Because you can see that.
Yeah, I can see that. So on one side, I've got a cross in the middle, and then on one side, because I was brought up a Catholic, I had to keep my mum happy. So I've got Jesus and the
that's nice.
crucifix and
stuff. And did
that
that keep your mum happy?
Well, to a certain extent, yeah. She wasn't happy at first.
No.
But she said, "Oh, you know what? I quite like it now."
That's nice. Does she get any herself as a consequence?
Well, actually, she got one when she was about 18, so she doesn't have a leg to stand on.
No, exactly that, you see. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. How long have you been listening to this programme, Harry, if you don't mind me asking?
Probably about a year and a half now.
Yeah, see, what you don't know is that I used to be incredibly obnoxious about tattoos.
I'm glad you're not anymore.
Well, absolutely not anymore, because this won't be of particular interest to you. But for people who were listening 10, 15 years ago, this will be an extraordinary example of reverse ferreting for me. I'm going to get one soon.
And will this be your first tattoo?
Yeah, absolutely it will. And I know what I'm getting. I'm just a little bit unclear on where I'm going to get it, so to speak.
Well, maybe you should get two, and you should get it on both sides of the body, and then you can sort of put my theory to the test.
I could report back on whether or not it hurt more on one side than the other. It's not the worst idea I've ever heard. Why does Harry feel more pain when he's been tattooed on his right-hand side than he does on his left-hand side? James is in Gillingham. James, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on, James. Jameses today. Loads of Jameses today. Is it just me, or has there been 4 or 5 of us on the show today? Stourbridge and James. Today's show was brought to you, if this was Sesame Street, by Stourbridge and James. Carry on, James.
All right, then. Well, my question is, I'm not a big fan of boxing. Occasionally watch it on television.
Yes.
And I've noticed some boxers that have no facial hair. Some have some sort of facial hair, like Tyson Fury occasionally has a beard.
Yes.
And I was wondering how big a beard could be before a boxer wasn't allowed to box.
Because it was a cushion.
Exactly. It'd be the equivalent. If you had someone like, was it W.C. Grace?
Yes, the cricketer.
If you had cricketer. If you had a beard his size, or Brian Blessed was a boxer or someone like that, then he presumably would act as a lot of padding. Yeah.
I mean, I presume it would a bit. But I don't know that it's going to have a particularly measurable
If you put all
effect.
of that hair into a pillowcase and then put it under your chin, I would have thought that it would act as some sort of...
I don't know if it... Would it? I get some very odd mental images popping up in my mind now. People dancing around boxing rings with pillowcases strapped to their chins. But okay, I mean, the short answer is, if there's a rule, I'll eat my hat.
Okay, well, can I just run something by you? I think it was your very lovely producer who answered, said he was an amateur boxer, I think, and he kind of said there was an answer to this.
It's not
So I don't know. I don't want to sort of push you into the corner.
Is it? It's a thing. Oh, well, okay. So. Well, don't mind me. You two just chat among yourselves. It's just my programme. Well. That's absolutely fine. Okay, so wow. Okay, it's on the board. You might have to ring in, Elliot. Get an answer before the end of the programme. That'll be a first. Well, at least on this show. Thank you, James. It's coming up to 1:45. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Is there a limit to how big your beard can be if you're boxing? Because if it were too big, it would be a cushion and a beard, and therefore have an impact upon your performance. Why does Harry's tattooing hurt more on his right side than his left side? What determines whether a loan word is singular or plural? Think cappuccino versus panini. We've done the tree. Great answer from Sam. Great question from Ian. Someone must know Amy's question. Someone must know the answer to the question of why baby clothes say UK age 12 to 18 months and US and Canada 24 months. I can't even begin to think what the answer to that might be, but all of those need answers. 03456060973. And now a quick check. Your last chance. Shall I read out the most inappropriate message I've ever been accidentally sent in all the years that I've been presenting this programme and reading out text messages that I've accidentally been inappropriately sent? With the caveat that there's no reason... I mean, even if it hadn't been sent accidentally, it contains information that is entirely unnecessary on every imaginable level. I'm going to read it out, aren't I? We all know I'm going to read it out. Don't send me a text. Seriously, we all know I'm going to read it out. Can I read it out? It's all right. It's not an Ofcom, is it? I'm going to read it out after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:48 is the time. So I'm quite a delicate flower. You may not have picked up on this during all the time that we've spent together, but I'm not smutty ever. In private or in public or on air. I don't like that kind of... I like a nice double entendre, but I don't like proper smut. And I don't like Rudy stuff. But this one made me bark with laughter when I read it, and I thought I'd share it with you. So you know what the number is to text me, 84850, and this is a text. So it's a hard number to get wrong, right? It's a hard thing to text by mistake. And if you do text it by mistake, then you're texting probably another 5-figure number. So it would be another radio station or another special offer. Do you see what I mean? It's not like a phone number, is it? It's a special text line number. I've pressed the history button. They've never texted before, which means they probably don't realise they've sent it to me. I do like Viz, that's true. Thank you. But I'm just going to read it to you. I don't want to big it up too much, but I cannot imagine the story here. Well, I can imagine it. I just don't want to. So somebody texted this at 11:57 today. I've never been more tempted to ring someone back who sent a text to the programme than I am by this. It's just to say, pardon. Well, first of all, say, are you finished? And then, so anyway, ready? It's you don't have to cover the kids' ears. There's no rudeness here, but it's not very nice. Okay, are you ready? Someone sent this to LBC Radio at 11:57 on Thursday, October the 16th, 2025. I'm having a poo. Can you ring Rach? What is going on there? What can Rach do? Why does he need help from Rach? You see what I mean about that? It's just opened so many doors of inquiry. I'm having a poo. Can you ring Rach? I'm just leaving that there. I'm not commenting it again. I'm not going to say the word again, but there it is. That is I've said it before and I'll say it again. You never know what's going to pop up in my inbox next, do you? It's definitely not Idiot's Corner territory. What is it? I don't know. Janice is in Sudbury to take us back to Mystery Hour proper. Janice, question or answer?
Answer.
Okay, you don't know anyone called Rach, do you?
No.
Just checking. Carry on, Janice.
So this is purely from experience and not qualification, but my young children. The age is in the US and Canada is up to 24 months, up to 24 months, and we are from 12 to 18 months.
Qualifications?
Just being a mum.
That works, doesn't it? It's got to be
experience.
That. Yeah, so up to 24 months, so it might fit up to 24 months, but it's not going to fit after 24 months, so you get 12 to 18. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's brilliant. You've got your round of applause. Well, I mean, it's nowhere near a mystery anymore, is it? You've got a logical mind. So you've struggled, you've thought about it in the past?
No, I've bought clothes 24 months thinking from, like we do here. And then they're very small. Yeah,
there it is. That's perfect. What a lovely answer to a lovely question. Have a round of applause on me, Janice. Great work.
Thank you.
I really like that. 12:53 very nearly. 03456. What still needs answers? The beards. The plurals, the borrowed words, the tattoos. Why does it hurt more on the right than it does on the left? But we've done the baby grows, which is the one I was most worried about. Mark's in Barrow-in-Furness. Hello, Mark.
Hello, it's nice to speak to you again.
It's been a while. What I like about you, Mark, I like many things about you, but what I particularly like about you is that you're a man for quality, not quantity. I imagine there's times when you could ring in, but you think it's not quite squarely enough in my purview, so I won't. So you wait until it's bang on the tee, don't you?
Yeah, I was thinking you're talking about the moon because I do know some astronomy, but I'm glad someone came in. I did actually try a couple of times recently. Once when I was in Helsinki, I tried to get on. So it's not for want of trying, but as you say, I do sometimes think better of something because someone will know more.
That's got me written all over it. Go on.
Well, I just like being involved.
Yes, me too.
And saying something about the cappuccino business.
Yes.
Foreign plurals are by no means obvious always, especially if people don't really know the language at all. And you think of Italian plurals of masculine nouns as straightforward. They end in O in the singular and E in the plural.
Yes.
But it's not as simple as that. If you think about it, there are lots of Italian male names, forenames that end in E, like Giovanni.
Yes.
John, and also lots of then you get family names which often have a plural form, and they stick with the plural form even if it's a singular reference. You know, so you get Leonardo da Vinci, or you get something else with an E ending, and lots of composers' names and things. So it isn't always obvious. Now, about Panino and Panini,
yes,
I've heard two theories of this.
Go on.
One is that the use of panini as a singular started in the United States, where there are a lot of Italian-American restaurants, some of them run by people who aren't themselves Italian.
Right.
And the form came to be mistaken for a singular.
Makes sense.
And then it spread. The other explanation, which might make more sense in Italy, is that the singular panino, which is now rare, was once used to mean half of a panini, like a sandwich. You have two bits that fold together.
Wow.
And so one bit on its own would be a panino, but the two clamped together with something in between are a panini or two panini.
Well, they both work for me, and it's one of those ones that we don't know for certain what it is.
We don't know for certain. People tell you different stories.
And so it's arbitrary then. I mean, because cappuccino, cappuccini, it's relatively arbitrary. Some people, sometimes they'll put the plural on the menu, sometimes they'll put the singular.
I had a Singapore Chinese friend who embarrassed her Italian husband greatly by asking for due cappuccino.
Yes. Oh.
And he looked horrified.
He was livid. He was livid.
In Chinese, words don't have different singular and plural forms, so that may have been a factor for her.
Oh, blimey, you're opening up a whole new Pandora's box. Remind us of your... Well, for people who don't know, Mark, what are your qualifications?
Oh, a long-standing and now aged professional linguist.
Professional linguist. Round of applause for Mark. Take care. What were you doing in Helsinki? Business or pleasure?
We went to meet the Moomins, particularly.
Of course you did. Oh, what a silly question.
We went to their island.
Oh, wow. Was it fun?
Oh, it was wonderful. And there was also a big museum in Tampere. It's the 80th anniversary of the first Moomin book.
Is it really?
And we had a great time in Finland and saw much else as well.
Oh, right, so look at that. In Finland, put it on your list. What a wonderful trip. David's in Putney. David, question or answer?
Answer to the tattoos.
Oh, yes.
So, body composition doesn't play too much of a role. There is some element of it, but pain is largely about your perception of it. Because, say, imagine you're getting a tap dripping on your forehead, but you're playing a game that you really enjoy playing, you wouldn't really notice your water dripping down on your forehead. And similar things happen for pain. It's just a perception-based thing. So the answer follows along the lines about like which side is his dominant. It's sensitivity. He's more attentive to his right side because he uses it more. So because he's more sensitive to it, he pays attention to it, he perceives the pain to be slightly more.
So I was kind of right.
Yeah, it actually transfers to what he almost said, and a question that he didn't ask about his stronger side being his left side.
Yes.
Because he's a lot more using his fine motor skills on his right side, because he's more attentive, it means his gross motor skills on his left side, so the larger muscle groups would be more used, so he's less attentive to them because he's used to being a lot more finicky on one side and a lot more gross motor movement on the other side. Hence why you're stronger on your non-dominant side most often.
Qualifications?
Sports science and applied physiology.
That'll do nicely. Have a round of applause on me.
Thank you very much.
I think we've only got one left, if we can squeeze it in. Michael's in Bracknell. Michael, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on, mate.
And it's to do with the beards and boxing.
Yes.
And my understanding is the reason you're not allowed a large beard is because it would cover up any injuries, so the ringside medic or the referee wouldn't be able to see.
So there is a limit on how much facial hair you can have, but it's not determined. It's not because the cushioning factor.
You can only have quite a short beard for that reason.
Qualifications?
I'm an amateur kickboxer.
Well, isn't it a small world? Sheila Fogarty, me, and you, all amateur kickboxers.
Excellent. Oh, we'll have to have an interclub sometime.
Yeah, let's not get carried away. Have a round of applause. I'm going to give it to Harry, the tattooed man. It's a shame we haven't got a sort of reflective panel on the Miss Chad board game so he could finally see what it is that he's got tattooed on his back. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date on all the top stories and opinions, put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio, and listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily. Best bits from this show every day. Download the LBC app for free from your app store now. Join Tom Swarbrick at 4, and now on LBC, it's Sheila Fogarty.
Thank you very much, James.
James O'Brien on LBC.